FinCom to order. I now call the Hamilton Finance and Advisory Committee to order on May 11 for a joint meeting with the Select Board at 6 o'clock.
Why don't we do a roll call to say who's here?
Yes, Dave Wanger.
Valerie McCormick here.
John Prulich here.
According to my screen, that's who you've got. All right. FinCom is called to order.
All right, how about Board of Selectmen? Welcome everyone to tonight's Town of Hamilton Board of Selectmen and Finance Advisory Committee meeting for Monday, May 11th. We will take a roll call in order to get the meeting started. How about Darcy?
Darcy, present.
Bill?
Darcy,
William Olson, present.
Sean?
Sean Farrell, here.
Rosie?
Rosie Kennedy here.
Jeff Hubbard here.
Okay.
All right.
Everybody's here. I'll note, Jeff, that Bill Bowler is here too, just in case not everybody can see him.
Thanks for being here, Bill.
Happy to.
All right, we'll start off real quickly with the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a short agenda, but we'll start off with that as we always do. Pledge of Allegiance
To the flag, United States of America,
to the Republic,
Which
stands
one nation, under God,
Indivisible.
for liberty
And justice for all.
Great, thank you. All right, we are going to go right into the agenda tonight, and we're going to start off with the introduction of the developer, David Tragorth, excuse me, for the Willow Street project. David, welcome.
Jeff, if I can just jump in, just
Yep.
do a quick Rick Mitchell, even though it says Corinne Kale. Just wanted to thank you for the opportunity as president of the HDC, introduce Dave Tragorth to the Board of Selectmen. And then really, hopefully at the end, get your support for the project, as we will be looking for that in a letter eventually to the Department of Housing and Community Development. Just a little background is Hamilton Development Corporation got this project approved by the Planning Board in December. We issued an RFP in January and widely advertised it. And however, Tragorth was, and to our good fortune, the sole respondent to the proposal. And they proposed an 18-unit project that included 9 affordable units. And under Mass General Law 40B, when a private developer does 25% of the units or more, all the units will count towards our housing inventory. So that's very exciting. And so we're very excited about that project going forward. It's providing much needed market rate rental housing. It's going to provide about $57,000 in tax revenue and stimulate downtown businesses as well as helping in the general economy when this is, goes to be built. So want to turn this over to David to give a brief overview of the project and answer any questions you might have. And then Russ at the end, Russ Tanzer, chairman of the Affordable Housing Trust, background on what they've done and basically wrap it up, I think.
So thanks, Rick. My name is Dave Tragorth, and Dan Hubbard is my partner, and somewhere on the screen there he is. And we also have another partner, Tanya Hanel, that make up Tragorth Companies. And really, thank you for taking the time. I know this is just a crazy time for everybody, so we really appreciate making some space for us, and can't thank you enough. And we're excited to be having the opportunity to work in Hamilton, community we've long admired. And I was sort of poking around Hamilton, several years ago, when on our trek to look at pretty much every TOD location in every community that we could, as we were sort of scoping out projects, and certainly a community that we're thrilled to be having the opportunity to work in. So I'll talk a little bit about Trevorth Companies, not very long, and then hand it over to Dan, who would talk about some of the specifics of the project, and then I'll briefly touch on the timeline, and hope we'll move pretty quickly, but feel free to stop and ask us questions, or happy to stick around as long as you like. So a little bit about Trevorth Companies. I started in Boston about 10 years ago, and our sweet spot for development is really projects that benefit from the combination of public and private investment. We are a for-profit. We basically know how to use almost every public resource that's available to us, whether that's local, state, or federal. And we also have a tremendous amount of private capital, both conventional capital and debt and equity, but also social equity capital that we've used. And then we're actually proposing on this project that looks for projects that serve communities, serve public policy goals, and try and use all those tools to make what we think are good projects happen. And this certainly fits in that character. They're really projects that can't happen in a traditional debt and equity financing perspective, but can happen when you mix in all these different things and try and get a better result at the end. We've been doing this for about 10 years, 8 years on our own, Dan and I and Tanya. We've got the skill set of a lot of the bigger developers that know how to use tax credits and know how to use these public dollars, but we work at smaller scales because we're really nimble, relatively small shop, and can execute at 18 units and above. And that's really beneficial for a lot of communities in New England. Small parcels, main streets. There's not a lot of 100-unit projects out there to be done in New England. So we work exclusively in the Commonwealth at this point. Have plenty to do here, which we're thrilled about because it makes it easy to get home to see the kids. And we've done 30 projects in some form or fashion over the years. We are also long-term owners and really build and treat the project in that way, whether that's dealing with neighbors, whether that's dealing with how we're going to build it, or whether that's dealing with residents. We're not flippers by any stretch of the imagination, and I think our track record really shows that. And I'll take you quickly through some of the projects. I'll try and share my screen just to highlight some of, it says I can't. I'm happy to skip this portion, but couple project experiences that we've had, and these are in our proposal, so feel free to reference that or look up on our website. So first is 24 Gould Street in Reading. This was a very, very tight site where we have probably 5 residential neighbors directly on the back end of the site. And it's a 55-unit project with 3,500 square feet of retail. It's under construction right now in Reading, right next to the T, 25% affordable. We have a little bit of DHCD money in for the affordable component, but all the rest is just conventional financing. We worked before we even went to the permitting stage, we talked to the neighbors. And I know all the neighbors personally have sat at their dining room tables if they'll let me. Some told me what they thought, and that was the end of that conversation, but others have been really great to work with. And we do treat them as our neighbors throughout construction. We update them weekly on our progress. We also, they have my number, they text me if anything is happening. And, that's the way I would want to be treated if something big was going up in my backyard as well. So that's how we really look at it. We've also done a lot of work in April, 2 projects and the conversion of former mill building right on Main Street. The first is JM Lofts. It was 18 units over about 3,500 square feet of retail building that had been long vacant. We used historic tax credits, we used some local money, and then conventional financing to transform that building And now on the ground floor, it has Battlegrounds Coffee, which is just a rapidly expanding behavioral-owned business, and Switch, which is an art gallery, and it's been a huge success as well. All of our projects, really from an occupancy perspective, have been 95% plus occupancy from the get-go. And even through this have maintained that. The mayor asked us to look at another building, is there a Main Street in Haverhill? And we did that one as well, and just completed that. 19 units over about 3,500 square feet of retail, and that's fully occupied. So those are the behavioral rate projects that we've worked on. Those were renovation rehabs with ground floor retail. We also did 100% affordable projects in Hyde Park, neighborhood of Boston, directly on the T, and 27 units, new construction, ground up. No retail on that one, but directly adjacent to a retail district, basically between the transit station and the retail district. And that one really, from the perspective, was it was in a blighted industrial site and has kicked off a lot of other development talk, and people see the possibilities now that one has been done and housing can be successful. So we've done this scale of project we've done before. This complexity of financing we've done before. This tight and close to neighbors and retail businesses we've done before. And as we've done with Rick, shared a lot of those references from those projects, whether they be municipal officials that are happy to speak with you, their select board members from those towns or city councilors, happy to connect you with those folks. So I'm going to pass it off to Dan to talk a little bit more about exactly what we're proposing here.
Thanks, Dave. So my name is Dan Hubbard. I'm Dave's partner. So to keep it quick, largely we are planning to build pretty much what was designed, 18 units, keep the bedroom mix the same with 14 ones and 4 twos. We're planning on keeping the retail building at 63 Willow as is, hopefully keeping the tenants there if they're willing to stay, and try to, keep that building up, but not change anything in that perspective. As was mentioned, the only change from the RFP really was adding some affordability. So we've gone from doing just the bare minimum to adding 9 affordable units, so 9 market and 9 affordable. All the affordables will be at 80% AMI. An AMI right now is something like $120,000 for a family of 4. For an individual, it's about $70,000, I believe. So it's a relatively high number. But this project specifically fit in perfectly with what the Department of Housing and Community Development is trying to push for with their CSHI program, which is the Community Scaled Housing Initiative. It's for smaller projects under 20 units in downtowns, near transit, in smaller smaller cities and towns. So it fit in perfectly. We thought it was a great fit for them. We've been having conversations with DHCD for a while since this RFP came out, and they keep telling us they're very excited to get a project in Hamilton. So we have applied for that funding in the pre-application process. We should hear back in about a week on acceptance through the pre-application. Then there's an application on June 30th, which we'll be asking for support letters for, and then funding is expected to be announced in September or October of this year, which would allow a closing in the beginning part of next year. So we'll keep everybody updated on that. One fundamental element of getting the state to put in money is have the town put in money, and thank you very much for that. We've have the award from the Town Affordable Housing Trust, which has been huge. The state really looks to see a commitment from people that live there before investing, so that gives it all the more strength and possibility of getting funded. So we think it's a pretty strong project from a getting funded perspective. So we expect to and expect to be able to start on that timeline. I think, as Dave said, our plan here is to keep this long term, keep it rental long term. That should allow it to stay in the SHI long term, all of the 18 units. And I think the only other point is, generally we have been thinking about who's going to live here. In our experience, we've largely built mostly one bedroom on average, slightly smaller units in downtown locations, whether that's Haverhill. Most of the units in Reading are also one bedrooms. And what we tend to see are local people, for the most part, usually on the slightly older side, maybe downsizing from a house, want to find a way to stick in town without having the big house they're used to. We also see, plenty of people that are maybe younger professionals that are done with Boston, want to get back to the area they grew up in, but aren't quite ready to buy a house yet. So we see a pretty wide range of ages, but usually singles or couples for the most part. Not too many families at the end of the day. So I'll turn it back to Dave.
Our immediate just request would be part of our community scale housing initiative application requires support letters. And so we would love to have a support letter from the Board of Selectmen if possible. And then we'll prepare that going forward. And I think, as Dan noted, if hopefully we'll be very competitive. We have a great relationship with the UCD. And have already spoken to them multiple times about this project. Hopefully we're funded in the first round, which would be a notification this fall. And if that happens, then we could certainly look at a construction start in the early 2021 category. And so that's really where we are at the moment. Obviously, one thing out there that nobody can anticipate is obviously the impacts that coronavirus will have. But as we were doing with all of our other projects, we're going with the flow, controlling what we can, and reacting as appropriately as we can. But ultimately, we think this project is a strong project no matter what, because of its location, because of Hamilton, because of who it's going to serve, and the fact that demand is not going anywhere. So I think I'll pass it back to Rick and Russ. I'm happy to answer any questions as they come up.
Russ, you want to take it over now? Russ, can you unmute? Here you go.
Here we go.
Yes, we hear you now.
I'm usually not muted. Thanks, Rick. Thanks for the intro. Dave and Dan, nice to meet you. And I'm very pleased that you came forward. So back on April 9th, the Hamilton Affordable Housing Trust voted unanimously to fund $500,000 towards the purchase of the Willow Street project. And although it sounds like a heck of a lot of money, I want to put it into perspective here, because there are 50% of the project, or the project is 50% affordable, which is really important. It's confirmed through DHCD that all 18 units, in fact, will count on our affordable housing inventory, which is very important. And in terms of what that means financially, I took that $500,000 number and divided it by the 18 units in total that would go onto the SHI, and it's just under $28,000 a unit. The averages in the Commonwealth that communities throw towards affordable housing range from $165,000 to $185,000 per unit. Those are just the facts of it all. I would also add that the last 2 units that were built in town, which were the Habitat, 2 single families that are on Asbury, the cost of those 2 units was in excess of $320,000 to the town. So this is really quite an extraordinary opportunity to get units on our SHI in perpetuity for an unbelievably affordable number. I will also add that I've spoken to our person at DHCD at great length, and Dave and Dan come highly recommended. The experience with DHCD is that they say what they're going to do and they do what they said they're going to do. So they're straightforward. They've got glowing references, and this is a big plus for our community downtown. This is great. So I'm going to ask that the Board of Selectmen look at this favorably in order for Dave and Dan to get through the permitting process here with the Commonwealth. They're going to need to know that they're supported by the BOS. It's very important that happens. We're also going to have to reach out to Brad Hill and
Bruce Tarr.
Thank you, Bruce, to get their thumbs up on this as well, which we'll be doing. But we're looking forward to something that's going to be really nice downtown, and they're going to build what was permitted.
I mean, Russ, I think it's a big win. It's been a former member of the AHAHT, but we always looked at it. One of my jobs was to look at the numbers, right? The cost per unit. Even in the surrounding communities, when we look at the communities right around us, it was still average of like $50,000 a unit. So to get these for under 30 is a big win for the town. And I looked at your website, Dave, you guys are doing beautiful work around the Commonwealth. So we hope that you will continue that look in Hamilton, because we think that's what we deserve around here, something that looks that nice. So I applaud. We've been looking at this property for a long time. So I think it's a win-win for us to sort of get the 18 units count for it, get it for the number that we wanted to. So a lot of time and effort went into that. So nice job, Russ.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks for your support.
Russ, this is Darcy.
Hi, Darcy.
Hi. Can you tell me what will happen to Max Shoe, the building?
The building is going to stay as it is. The idea is that the tenants would stay there, and that's all part and parcel of the proposal from Tregorth.
Okay, great.
A question for Rick and Dave and Dan. Thanks for the presentation. I'm with Bill on this. I don't want to be repetitive, but I'm in full support of the movement forward on this project. But just a question for Rick: has Dave and Dan gotten a copy of our design guidelines from our planning board? I know they're well underway in the planning and stuff, but have they used that as kind of a guide for the appearance of the building?
Well, that actually goes back before Dan and Dave showed up on the scene. The planning board promulgated those design guidelines probably about 10 years ago. And those were part of the review process by the planning board to make sure that the building fit within the context of the downtown. So I think the answer is yes.
Perfect.
And has the neighbors been able to meet you guys yet? Has there been any sort of neighborhood forum to introduce? Is that a next step?
Yeah, we're certainly eager to meet with the neighbors, and I think if there are any neighbors here, let me know, and I'm happy to share my contact information. Yeah, I mean, we're thinking about ways to engage with folks early and often. Obviously, it's a little more challenging than I'm used to.
People are available more. People are always around. So
that's true. I'm used to just knocking on doors. But anyways, yeah, that's part of our plan. I mean, we're even though this is permitted, we are going to be an owner and a neighbor, and certainly want to meet folks and talk to them. So
yeah, just as note that Tony Passaretti, who's the husband of Martha, and one of the main butters is an associate on the Hamilton Development Corporation, and specifically there to make sure that the neighbors' concerns about anything the HDC are incorporated in this project and anything else we do in the future.
David Winger, do you all, the FinCom, have any comments or opinion on this, how this is working out for the town?
We haven't reviewed it as a body. I've been somewhat involved at your request with the neighbors, as you know, and I'm delighted to hear from Dave and Dan the commitment to work with the neighbors. Rick also has made that commitment, and that'll go a long way, not only in terms of this project, but as a template for future development. But to your question, Jeff, we haven't discussed it as a group, but Russ's calculations and the contribution of the trust make a great deal of sense. So that my assumption is that FinCom would be supportive of this project as it's been described. And indeed, if it would be in furtherance of the success of the project to have FinCom note its support to the state in terms of a letter, I think that's doable also.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Jeff, question. We don't want to take any more time because we know you've got a lot of territory to cover. What would be the best process in terms of getting a formal vote of support by the Board of Selectmen to make this happen? So at the time we want to write a letter that we will have already gone through the process.
Yeah, I think Joe helped me here, but I think if you all have a template of something you've used in the past that would work well for you, that if you could get that to Joe and we could put it on, get it out to all of us to read and approve and put it on our next agenda for signature approval. Does that make sense, Joe?
You took the words out of my mouth.
Right.
Said you wanted my help, and then you did it just fine without me.
Okay, very good. That's excellent. So we'll work with Dave and Dan to get a letter formulated and then send it to Joe. And Joe, I guess you can run with that.
Yep, we'll get it on the Board of Selectmen's agenda for next Monday night. And unless they have significant changes, we could probably work through that and have a vote for them next week.
Great. Thanks so much.
Good. No, thanks, guys. Appreciate your commitment to the town to beautify it and give us what we need. So thank you, guys.
And I just want to thank the Affordable Housing Trust as well. This has really been an excellent example of two town committees working very closely together in a very tight timeline. I think we did this in Russ, probably 5 weeks. We went from
Years.
We went from a proposal to getting all this information and getting the Affordable Housing Trust to commit $500,000 to the project. So it was very impressive. So again, thank you to the Affordable Housing Trust.
Well, Rick, you've been a-okay about pulling together your side of things, and I think as a whole, the town has become very fortunate to find to have Dave and Dan find us as a community, and we're going to look forward to a really nice project here in town, in the center of town. It's going to help with the merchants downtown and bring some more vibrancy into the downtown. I think is great, and that's pretty special stuff, coupled with the fact that it really does, by all descriptions, follow the smart growth principles that DHCD has come forward with, and is hoping that communities will take some guidance from. And this just happens to be that. So I'm delighted as well. Rick, it's been a pleasure.
Okay.
This is what the town asked for. Affordable housing group that no more than 20 and smart. This is exactly what we tried to get for years. So it's good to see it actually can happen with a lot of hard work. So thanks for the hard work, guys.
My pleasure.
All right, well, David and Dan, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Rick and Russ, thank you both for joining us. I think we learned a lot, and it sounds like a good project for the town.
Thank you for having us, and
Thank you all.
Thank
look
you.
forward to meeting you in person sooner rather than later.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Hopefully.
6 feet apart.
Yes, we'll wave. Have a good night.
Put the shovel in the ground.
There you go.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, on to the next item on the agenda, which is the discussion of the new town meeting dates. Joe, do you want to take this?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll kick things off a little bit for you. Just wanted to, call to mind that if you have an intention of doing a town meeting before July 1st, then you pretty much have to make the decisions tonight and next week, because you'll be running out of time in order to get the agenda finalized, to get the warrant finalized, to get it to the printers, to get it posted. We do have a deadline with the town election as well. The town election cannot be moved beyond July 1st. Tom McEnany has checked into that for us. So has the interim town clerk. She checked with the Secretary of State's office today. There is no moving foot in the legislature to make any accommodation for that. So we're going to have an election by July 1st anyway. Our town bylaws tie the two events together. So the easiest way to do it would be to try to do a town meeting on June 20th with an election 5 days later. That would allow us to get both done within both state law and the town bylaws. If we got to the 20th and there was weather, or there had been a recent uptick in cases and we had to kick it out, we'd have the ability of the town moderator to postpone it with 10 voting members of the town meeting to open the meeting and then postpone to another date, or continue to another date. I would say that the one problem is that if we were to continue that date beyond July 1st, then we would be in a spending problem because we can't spend after July 1st. So I know there's been some talk about the so-called 1/12 budget option. There was some guidance last Friday from DOR, which is helpful, but it also points out a number of complicating factors, which I hope you'll let Marissa talk to some of those. To be short about it, it would be a lot of work, and it's work that would be ongoing every month until you finalize the budget. And so while you were doing that work every month, you'd also be constantly updating and changing the budget proposal, because every time you make a decision to go forward with a 1/12 budget, you're going to have to rework all the numbers and also work on the budget proposal for a 1/12 budget. So it's a little bit daunting. I understand everybody's concerns about rushing too fast and returning things too quickly. But if we want to try to have a town meeting before the end of the year, then you need to make a decision today and then again next Monday, in order to go forward with it. If you don't, tell us now and we'll just focus on the 1/12 budgets. But that will be, like I said, that will also be a very, very big undertaking. I don't know if you would like Marissa to talk a little bit about where we're at. I know we have it down further in the discussion to talk specifically about warrant articles and budget. So we can keep that off until you've made a decision whether you want to move forward or not. So.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd like to keep moving forward with it, or at least trying to move forward with it, doing our best attempt at it. I worry about the 1/12 budget, and I worry about the tax on Marissa and really our limited staff at town hall to do all this every month, and the actuals and everything like that. I'd like to kind of shoot for the moon here and have plan B as a backup for the 1/12 budget if we can't do it. I'd like the option to give it a shot and do the tent situation and 8 foot of distancing, and our quorum is really low as it is. So, I don't think really quorum may be a problem. I think that's the least of my concerns, other than, the health issues if things trend up again with the outbreak. But we've had a relatively small number in town. I think our kind of best effort should go towards having town meeting on the 20th like we've planned, and that way we can have elections in a somewhat normal manner, and not have to worry about the 1/12 budget and have that kind of as a backup if for some reason, if it upticks and the governor says we have to do restrictions again, and then we go to plan B. I'd like to give us the option.
Can I just add to, just so you know, in preparation for trying to figure out what to do about a budget and things, we were scheduled to negotiate contract extensions with 2 unions. Both those unions have verbally agreed to commit to a 1-year holdover agreements for us that would allow us to treat all of our employees and the unions the same going into the next budget year. The 1/12 budget wouldn't allow us to accommodate them either with a 1-year extension or at all, really, because technically their existing agreement expires on June 30th, and you can only carry forward any proposed, COLA increases and things in the budget that have already been approved by a previous town meeting. So these agreements, the existing agreement expires, and then the holdover agreement would not have been blessed by a town meeting. So the employees in those 2 unions would necessarily wind up being treated differently during the 1/12 portions of the budget year. We wouldn't be able to do that for them.
Right. We'd want to keep it fair for them for the COLAs and stuff that we've been given to the other unions during negotiations. So that would be helpful.
Yeah.
There are also, and if you don't mind me letting Marissa talk in a minute. I'm sorry, I don't know who I'm cutting off. I can't tell.
Cutting me off. It's all right, Joe.
Sorry, Bill. Marissa also has a number of other areas that she's identified, things that we wouldn't be able to do in the budget, like we wouldn't be able to fund in the 1/12 budget. We wouldn't be able to fund the stabilization funds. We wouldn't be able to fund OPEB. But she can. I believe her list is longer than what I'm recalling right now. So.
And would it be transfers and things like that, Marissa? And I'll let you kind of speak to stuff like that. But I'd imagine there's a handful of things that go on kind of hold for a year for us.
Well, before we get into the semantics of I just want to understand the semantics of having a meeting. So Governor Baker's order, and our town council maybe can shed some light, but Governor orders Baker's order number 30 says as of the 28th of April, we still cannot gather more than 10 people. So what happened with that?
So to answer that question specifically, there's an exception in the governor's order. The limitation on social gatherings technically does not apply to municipal legislative bodies. So the limitation on 10 and the previous limitation on 50 does not apply to town meeting currently. Okay. So you could go forward with the town meeting right now if you wanted to.
Okay, great. Good news. Thank you.
And as you all are aware, we've been thinking about this for weeks and trying to do it in the ways that would be the most safe possible, provide more social distancing, provide in an environment where people wouldn't have to be grouped together in a small room, things like that. So, my only way to propose going forward is if we look at the outdoor on a football field with a tent, a floor on the field, temporary floor on the field to space chairs properly and have everybody safe, and require masks, require that they stay in their seats during the course of the discussion, and that the biggest thing is review the warrant and drill it down to just those items that have to be done. Those financial articles, those things that we want to take care of, like the 1-year carryover agreement with the unions, or funding our stabilization funds, which I'm sure we are going to need in the next year or two. I want to make sure that those things get accommodated, and then that's it. Everything else gets put off to the fall or till next year's town meeting. That's my recommendation on that. So,
Marissa, did you want to add anything?
Hey, Jeff, thank you. Well, my biggest concern is, to be honest with you, I think that we need to just make a decision whether we're going to move forward with having a town meeting on due or monthly, the 1/12 budgets. And the reason for that is that the Division of Local Services, they're actually asking for us to submit, if we are going to do the 1/12 budget, they're asking us to submit those as soon as possible. Which means that we could be submitting, next week. The concern is if we don't have a 1/12 budget approved by July 1st, we cannot do any spending. So I'm just more concerned with the timing of things. I mean, either way, yes, I will have to recalculate all the numbers. We have been doing that for a few weeks now. And until we just have a plan in place, there's certain things that I cannot recalculate. As you know, there are certain things that we have on our financial policies that it's based on our total budget. So if I don't know what that is, I cannot do the rest. So yes, to me, I'm starting to get a little nervous about the timing of things. Whether we are moving forward with an annual town meeting on June 20th, and if you tell me that's the case, then I'll go ahead and I'll start preparing all the calculations. But even if we are going with the 1/12th, I think it is time to also make that decision in order to be able to submit timely to before you actually submit, you actually need the approval from the Board of Selectmen, and then you submit it, and then you need the approval. And if we run into any type of unexpected circumstances, I just don't want to get to July 1st and we don't have any of them approved and there's no spending that can happen.
So are you saying, Marissa, that as I think it was Bill suggested or Sean suggested, that we move forward, we make a decision tonight to have the June 20th meeting, that the 1/12 budget isn't a really realistic option because then
it's realistic, but it has more restrictions. So the Division of Local Services actually sent out some guidance, which I know one of the last meetings I mentioned, I'm looking for the guidance from the Division of Local Services. It actually happened Friday afternoon. I still have a couple of questions, but in summary, there are certain things that are allowed for the monthly expenditures, which is, so they said they will allow debt service payments. They will allow amounts sufficient to cover regional school districts and pension assessments, and also expenditure estimate for operations in the general fund and enterprise funds. So those are the three items that they said they would allow the 1/12 budget to include. Some of the things that would not be allowed would be any activities that we believe that they might not be supported at town meeting. So if we have any items in question that we're not sure whether town meeting is going to vote yes or no, we can't include as part of the monthly budget. As Joe mentioned previously, if we have any COLAs or any collective bargaining agreements that have not been previously approved, we cannot include that as part of the monthly budget either. If we have any free cash votes, we cannot include that. So if we have any transfers to stabilizations, any appropriations from reserve premiums, cannot include. Any capital, cannot include. So there's more limitations on the 1/12 budget. The way I see it, they're allowing the 1/12 budget for things that are just necessary. Nothing out of the ordinary, nothing from free cash, no increases, nothing that we think that or they're make us believe that the town meeting might not approve, then we wouldn't be able to include that either. Some of these things we had discussions about, even if we did have a town meeting, to maybe only include articles that are financial related, or that so that we continue with our regular operations and just wait on capital until special town meeting, which it feels like, either way we would have to do, because all of those items were being funded from free cash and we wouldn't be able to use the free cash if we did the 1/12. So again, my concern is timing. And, having things approved and having a plan moving forward, making sure that we can continue operations coming July 1st.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it last week that we're in favor of. I think the question is there enough time to do it. So,
do you have, say we're going to go with the June 20th, and if something should happen, God forbid, worst thing, whatever, what would you be able to cobble together a 1/12? I'm just saying, if we go for the 20th and something happens and the governor says, for whatever reason, we can't, that's my only fear, is that we'll get so far, something will happen and the governor will intercede again. So is the 1/12 budget something that we could still utilize if necessary at such a late date?
I think we, go ahead. Melissa. All right, I was gonna say, I think we'd have to build, in the background, we'd have to build just a basic spending plan. Hey, this is what we need to pay payroll for the month of July. This is what our assessments are that we know. This is what we expect utility bills to be. And that's it, just basic, these are what we have to spend on in July. But basically, things like, you probably wind up seeing, a severe limitation on Parks and Rec, for instance, because I just don't know what they can do without going through the process of having their revolving fund approved by town meeting and things like that. So I didn't see the fluency or the flexibility and the guidance that said that we could do revolving funds. So they're not allowed to spend those then without authorization by town meeting. So I'd be worried about that. I think that might be one of the questions Marissa might have for the state. I'm just supposing, I haven't run that by her today, but I felt like there'd be some limitations that would mean we would just be saying, no, we're not going to do this for the month of July. We can't.
Jeff, I'd like to participate on behalf of FinCom. But first, reserving that opportunity, Dave Smith is here amongst us, chair of the Board of Health. I think you all need to hear from him as to his assessment, since the overhang here that's causing us all the difficulty is a health question. So Dave, you are available?
Yeah, mute. Dave, you're on mute.
Now, there we go.
There you go.
Okay, sorry. I was trying to avoid background noise. I'm going to do a 1-minute summary of numbers, and I'm going to headline everything I'm going to tell you with the words good news. All right? No bad news today, just good news. Numbers for Hamilton. The cases right now, total number of COVID positives, town of Hamilton, 23. And we've had no new cases in almost 1 week now. The current number in isolation it fluctuates. It's around 3. Number of deaths in Hamilton, its total is 6, none in the past week or so. And almost all of those 6 occurred in a nursing home or an extended care facility, the like. So again, those good numbers, I think, are a testament to how well our residents have listened to, absorbed, and followed all the guidelines and orders and so on that we've issued. Okay, that's really good news. Next, Essex County. Today was the first day that I've seen a new number of COVID positives of only 100 since late March. I've been looking and hoping and praying that we're going to see this curve flatten and maybe turn down, and it's finally happening. I'm pretty confident of that. And so think about it in these terms. The very first case of a positive COVID test in Essex County occurred in mid-March. That was almost 2 months ago. And since then, it rapidly escalated to the point where it was in the many hundreds for April and up until now. Today was the first day it's dropped down to 100. Good news. At the state, basically continuing good news. All the curves that I'm seeing show numbers are flattening or declining. Let me be specific. New hospitalizations for COVID-19 patients down significantly. Deaths from COVID-19 down significantly. Today, in fact, is the first day that I've seen the number of deaths attributable to COVID-19 drop below 100 since April 1st or 2nd. And again, the same pattern holds where 60%, almost 2/3 of the deaths attributable to COVID-19, totaling 5,000 now, have occurred in long-term care facilities. Here's a number that Rosie could probably relate to. I was noticing today that the number of COVID-19 positives at MGH has dropped below 300 for the first time in over a month. So those are some numbers. All good. Here's what I've come across in the past couple of days that I think is highly significant and relevant to plans for town meeting. We've got some new, things. This COVID-19 thing has become foremost in our minds only over the last couple of months. And every time doctors have been confounded by things, researchers have been confounded by things that we found. So it's a case of we keep learning. Here's a couple of new research papers that I've seen that I think are really relevant to this business of what about town meeting? Here are the highest probability of infection by COVID-19. In other words, the worst situation you could find yourself in. Indoors, in a small enclosed space with poor circulation, packed with people who are vocal, like they're singing, they're shouting, they're hollering, and over a long time. What occurred to me is, sounds like that might have been what you'd have found in Joe's office up until town hall was closed. That's the worst case, all right? Here's the best case, the best situation to find yourself in for the lowest risk of infection, outdoors. So be outdoors. Maintain a good 6 feet, more like 8 or 10 feet away from everybody else. Don't be heavily exerting yourself or be around people who are heavily exerting themselves, and wear a mask. Well, it seems to me, that it's well within our ability to plan a town meeting that respects those conditions that are the best in terms of lowest risk for infection by COVID-19. I really think we could do it if we plan carefully and follow the plan and do it right. I think we can do it. So that's an important perspective that I think we can apply to this possibility of holding town meeting on June 20th. It's not July, it's not January 20th, or we might have a blizzard, but it's June 20th. Yeah, it might rain. Okay, so we put just a roof over our heads. That's all. We would have to keep, for example, keep the sides of the tent wide open, maybe even have fans, and hold it maybe not early in the morning when the winds might not be as significant as later in the day. So those are the kinds of details we should think about. But I think as long as everyone understands the rules of engagement and we have our public safety officers there to help guide people and enforce the rules, I think we can make it happen safely. And I certainly think, having understood that a quorum now is only 75 people, I was thinking we could easily get over 100 people, even under these circumstances that I've just outlined. So that's the good news again. Remember, I'm only one member of the board. Our board is meeting tomorrow afternoon, and this subject is a main topic on the agenda. And I'm hopeful that we as a board of health could endorse a plan for town meeting that follows these kinds of guidance. Okay, so I'm open to questions.
I think that's good, David. I mean, I think all those facts are great. And the only other person I'd want to hear from is our moderator, Mr. Bowler, and see if he's talked to other moderators and if they have had town meetings, what best practices they've used or kind of what he's hearing through the kind of buzz of moderators.
Sean, I hope you'd like to hear from FinCom also.
Oh, of course, of course.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bowler, go right ahead.
You're on mute, Bill.
Me?
There you go.
Okay. I have been following this on the moderators Google groups, and there's been, as you can imagine, a lot of discussion, and many towns find themselves in this situation. And moving, I would say generally moving along the lines that David Smith talked about, outdoors, social distancing, paring down the warrant as much as possible, because there's obviously the health issue was paramount, but I think there's also the democracy / legitimacy issue, and we want to have a town meeting. Some of you may have seen there was an op-ed in the Globe last week by Jennifer Braceros, and saying basically we should put a knife in town meeting. And I can tell you that the Google group blew up about that, and I think there was a lot of pushback on the Globe. So I think town meeting's important. Health is paramount, but we need to also make sure that people feel like it was done legitimately. So I would be in favor, I think, of having a town meeting on June 20th, shooting for that, working to make it as safe as possible. I think we should also, it's going to be difficult, think about ways to, before the town meeting, to let citizens weigh in on their questions, concerns. That's going to be difficult, but we do want to. I'm generally in favor of working towards a June 20th town meeting. So,
Joe, just one thing with Joe. So Joe, I have 40 construction sites across Boston, which are going to go back under construction in the next 3-4 weeks, we hope. So I've been working on a steering committee. I think we need to form sort of a steering committee for what that looks like, what town meeting looks like, and get everybody involved. We meet, every other day or twice a week. I would volunteer myself for that. You got to get the right protocols in place, the right equipment in place. A lot of things to think about, a lot of questions asked. So I think I think we should form that steering committee and get that going and get all these great minds working together.
Sounds great to me. I'm happy to have the help. I thought you were going to have me do it all, so I'm glad I don't have to do it all.
I've certainly got the time.
Thank you, Bill.
I think that'd be good, to Bill's point, that the kind of, figure out the proper way to do this, or the best way to do it, which is safe for all of our citizens. And then also, we're going to have some rental equipment and stuff like that, and figure out all the logistics of that is going to be a bit of a daunting task if we're doing an outside event, to be able to have everybody hear and see and be able to speak and all that kind of stuff. There'll be some logistics of that for sure.
If I could interject, Bill, great suggestion. Thank you. I appreciate that. And it seems like you and Mr. Bull have already agreed to be on the committee. So if I could ask the FinCom to appoint a member as well, and I'll be reaching out. I'll reach out to the school department and have somebody from the schools be on the committee, so that we have an opportunity to work through the thought process with somebody that can, maybe their facilities director, Tom, or somebody like that, so that we can work through all of the logistics of how to get stuff in and done. Also, my understanding from talking to Anthony today is that Wenham Board of Selectmen is going to take this up tomorrow as well. And if we go forward, they're planning to, and if the legislature allows them to have their town meeting outside of their town borders, they seem to be interested in sharing the tent with us, not at the same time, but using it after we're done. So that could potentially save us some money as well. So just put that out there. That could be good for all of us. So in that event, we'd want somebody from Wenham to be on the steering committee as well.
Joe, it's David. Just a few more comments. I have submitted a note to our liaison at DPH with a rough idea of this plan we've got for town meeting, and I'm waiting for their feedback on it. So if they have some kind of overarching prohibitive concern, you can't do this, I'm going to try to scope that out, find out if that's the case. But otherwise, I think we should proceed, and of course, count me in on your organizing committee.
You read my mind. Thank you.
And then to David Wanger's point earlier, is there anybody else on FinCom that wants to chime in at this point before we get into talking about the warrant?
Well, I would, if I may. And then anyone else from FinCom, thank you, Sean. Absolutely welcome. We discussed this last Thursday at a FinCom meeting, and Jeff and Darcy were present along with Joe and Marissa. And I think it's fair to say the sense of FinCom from the discussions at that meeting is to recommend that we not go forward on the 20th, but I'll let FinCom members either affirm that or not to the extent it's relevant to you. Our function is solely to make recommendations. We have the luxury of not making decisions. But I want to remind you all that this is a very significant decision for you because, as Bill said, this is a question of health. We all would like regular order. We all would prefer not to be in this situation, but we are. So I think we need to deal with it with attention to Bill Bowler's concern, and that is that this process be one of integrity, where the public has some faith in the process. So by that I mean the following. It may be that a 75 is easily attainable, so that, as Sean said, the quorum is not really a concern. I'm concerned about disenfranchisement. I'm concerned about people not participating in governance because of the virus, because of fear. Valerie McCormick from FinCom mentioned last Thursday that young families, parents of children who can't have childcare because of the prohibition or concern about transmittal, they may not participate fully in the June 20 meeting. I had asked Mary Beth from the COA what her take was on seniors. And I think she won't mind if I paraphrase what she emailed to me today, and that is, regardless, I'm quoting now, regardless of whether you social distance and everyone wears masks, seniors are not going to sit on folding seats in the heat and humidity, even if it is under a tent. So that's Mary Beth's take on another demographic, that is senior citizens, who are increasingly an important fabric of our community. I understand the burdens on Marissa and Joe. Nobody has greater respect for Marissa than FinCom. We work closely together, and we're lucky to have her. We're not trying to impose without rationale. We're seeking to balance that with the importance of having this process one with integrity. I want to point out to you that if we go forward on the 20th, the agenda, the number of articles, the main themes are going to be very limited. We all agree to that. But that's exactly the context of the 112th. They both grow out of the same need. So the 112th is very limited, as Marissa and Joe has described, but many of the limitations parallel what we intend to do on our own in terms of a limited approach if we go forward on the 20th. So I'm not sure that that's a significant impediment to choosing the 112th over going forward. It'll be the same very restricted agenda. So I am expressing concerns about the integrity of the proceeding in terms of those whom I can't guarantee, of course, who may not attend, who otherwise would, but are fearful or can't make arrangements because of this damnable virus. So again, we have the luxury of gratuitously recommending. And I wanted to state that for your respectful consideration. I don't know if anyone else on FinCom wishes to speak up, and I'd like them to do that now.
I do. This is Christina. So I actually, I don't feel as strongly as David does about not holding the town meeting. It's a difficult choice. I think neither one is a good choice. But I have, listened to everybody's reasoning, and I trust that you've, taken into made all the considerations. And hearing David Smith say that he feels that the town meeting can go forward is reassuring to me. So I don't feel strongly that I should recommend against it. I agree with David Wanger that it's a big concern that a specific demographic of people will not want to come. It's a huge concern, and I don't know what to do about that. But I do feel like we need to make an attempt to try to have the town meeting and get some of the business taken care of.
All right. Anybody? Go ahead, Marissa.
I wanted to say thank you to David, but I also wanted to say that my biggest concern is not about the burden that it will have on the finance department. I'm mostly concerned about the limitations and the timing of things. So, whether we're putting together a complete budget or a 1/12 budget, we'll get it done. I just need to know which direction we're going. Yes, it's a lot of work. Hey, it is what it is. It's part of my job. No one planned it for this. So again, my concern is the timing of things and the limitations. And just to answer Darcy's question earlier, what if we plan to have a town meeting June 20th, something happens, and now we need to go to the 1/12? I've thought about that myself. And actually, I have started I've started to put one budget for July and one budget for FY21. My question is, if we plan to move forward with an FY20 date and it ends up being canceled or for some reason too close to that date, what's the turnaround for the state to approve the 1/12 budget? Because then it would be from June 20th to June 30th in order for them to approve the 1/12 budget for us to be able to start spending July 1st. Because my understanding is if you don't have that approval, then expenditures cannot happen as of July 1st.
Right. Yeah, that's my concern too.
Answer Darcy's question and just make that point.
Yeah, Marissa, when you got the the information from DOR on Friday, was it fairly clear and concise as far as what they wanted or needed and stuff? And it sounds like there wasn't any kind of timeline for acceptance or approval.
Well, they didn't. They actually said that we should submit as soon as possible if we are planning to do the 1/12 budget. That there weren't necessarily any dates. It was just, if you are planning on doing this, you should do it as soon as possible. You should have it approved by the Board of Selectmen. You need a certified vote from the clerk.
Mm-hmm.
All of that needs to be submitted through Gateway. And I don't know what the turnaround is for them to approve it. But as far as submitting it, it doesn't give you a date. It just says as soon as possible.
As soon as possible, right. I wonder if there's anybody, Joe, that we could talk to at the state level to see and just tell them our situation. We're planning a June 20th ATM, and if it somehow goes south on us and we turn in, in a couple days after that, a 1/12 proposal, will it be sufficient?
Yeah, I think that we actually have a scheduled call through the Mass Municipal Association tomorrow with folks from Governor Baker's office and DOR. So I can put that question into them, and we'll see. It might also be advisable to, as I said before, or alluded to before, kind of operate a little bit in the background on a plan B. So Marissa said she's already, I know Marissa, I was sure that she was already working in the background on a plan B on the 112 budget. I would suggest that probably later this month or the first meeting in June, I could present you with what a 112 budget for July would look like, have you vote it, get the vote certified at the next meeting and submit it even before in case of. But I'll confirm that DOR is amenable to that kind of backup solution.
Yeah, I would imagine with the situation that we're in, everyone, or at least a lot of other municipalities are in the same situation with the town meeting they're trying to do, not last minute, but at the last minute before, July 1st and try and get everything done so that they don't have to go to the 112th. I'd imagine we're not the only ones. So
yeah, we had a short call, just a couple, 5 or 6 town managers around the North Shore last week, and most of them were trying to get a town meeting done, but they're also doing, a submission to the state just in case something goes wrong. They're like us, they're all worried about what happens if the numbers start to go back. What if the governor starts to reopen next week or the week after, and then things are going along and then things start to creep back up again? What do we do? So they're all kind of thinking the same thing, that, let's try to get it done because it's the right thing to do. Their words, not mine. But let's try to get it done because we feel it's the right thing to do, but let's have a backup plan just in case. So
Joe, can
I have to confirm, we have to confirm that DOR will let us do that. But
Joe, can I ask, maybe what we should do is vote on it Wednesday after the Board of Health has had a chance to discuss, and perhaps they'll let you know what they discussed, and then you can tell us, or maybe they can send an email, so that when we meet next Monday, we would have all the information or the latest information. Does that make sense to you? Or
yeah, so I guess I want to clarify that you want to have a vote tonight, subject to the Board of Health's recommendation.
Thank you.
And then as long as the Board of Health's recommendation kind of aligns with what was discussed tonight, you go forward as planned, and we'll be ready Monday night to finalize the reduced warrant and things like that and get ready to go. That you can do that.
Do you think that's worth proposing then? Should I make a motion?
Yeah, Darcy.
I think that's good, Darcy. I mean, I agree with you. I think, I think from what I'm hearing, but I don't want to speak for everybody, that we're thinking about moving forward with ATM, but I do agree with you. We want to hear from the Board of Health and the latest on their meeting on Wednesday, because I don't want to go against the public health. So I think it's good to kind of do a preliminary vote and pending their approval or pending the recommendation, I guess. And
this means of communication is awkward, but I would like other members of FinCom, if they wish to express their view.
I'll express mine. I mean, I'm somewhere probably between David and Christina's view. It's a tough one. I think obviously, from the health is the number one concern that I have, and I feel after listening to David Smith and assuming the rest of the board agrees with his assessment, I'm less concerned about trying to have a town meeting. However, the fact that we still may end up disenfranchising, especially seniors, and as well as pointed out, parents with children, still a concern. And so even if we plan on going forward, I would hope there'd be some way that we can do some sort of community outreach to understand if members of the community are feeling disenfranchised by this, and still, not, they would have in a normal situation attended and are not going to be attending because of the virus. And if there's, enough consensus among the community, we should not be doing this. We would always have the opportunity to reverse course.
But can I
don't have a good answer for how to do that, and we clearly need to pick we need to go down a path before we're going to know that answer. But I think since we can always pull this off at the last minute for health concerns, I would throw that into the equation as well.
John, can I just comment on, in a way, if we message this correctly and we communicate correctly to the public, we can explain to them these are really extenuating circumstances and that we're going to be looking for voters to come and just do the barest minimum so that the rest of the people can stay home and stay safe, but that we'll do the heavy lifting so that our bills can get paid, and we can get to business in the fall at the special town meeting where all the really meaty stuff is going to be. I'm hoping people won't feel disenfranchised. I'm hoping they'll realize it's people helping people.
Establishing an online work permit process.
Well, okay.
Exactly. I think somebody was accidentally unmuted, so I just muted them.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. So my feeling is that we can frame this as the town helping itself. Some people will be able to go, they'll feel healthy enough, they'll feel that they can wear a mask and some gloves, and they're strong enough, they feel they can take that risk, however small it is, so that the people who don't have that feeling of safety can stay home just this once, because it's such an extenuating circumstance. I kind of hope people take it in a patriotic spirit.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that out of that, Darcy, I agree. I think that the most important thing that we can do is set up a safe environment. Right? We have to have very strict protocols so we don't have any risks. And if everybody follows those protocols, we enforce those protocols with the right distancing and the right PPE and the right education. Yeah, 'cause we can't do it if we don't have that, right? We have to let people have the confidence that we're doing it the right way. And there is a way to do it the right way. Working with David and working with the government, we can find the right way to do it. So I think that's the most important thing, is making it and communicating that to the
communicating.
That we've worked on a very strict program. We're going to enforce it.
Yep.
And
to let them know we're not looking to disenfranchise anybody. But right now, under this time constraints, we have very limited options.
I think that one of the things we do, I think most of us are very sensitive to the need to be careful from the public health standpoint. I know I am. I know many of you are. I've talked to most of you privately about this. I also think that there are a number of people who are less vocal, but who have on occasion made themselves known to me and other folks in town hall when they call us and ask us why we're not open, or why we're encouraging people to use the absentee ballots to vote in the town election, or why we're not letting this business or that business be open. There are almost as many people in our town who want us to kind of resume some level of activity again. And if we message to them that we do that, but we only do it in a safe way, that we practice social distancing, we wear our masks, we limit the way people enter and exit. If we can do those things, that helps us also set up that this is how we're going to operate going forward. We're going to be cautious and observant of each other when we're entering big spaces.
Right. I think to Joe's point there, and with both Bills here and a FinCom member, whoever's on that steering committee to help with whatever the protocol is, that we include that when we do our warrant mailing. And we say, here's the approved PPE, here's how you enter, here's where it's going to be, lay out everything that we need to, maybe do something on HW Cam, little PSA, and whatever we can through social media, and really get it out there on the procedures and how we're trying to keep everybody safe.
Anyone else from FinCom wish to put an oar in these waters?
I do have a question, and that is, what is the risk of going with the 12-month budget? I mean, that's the whole issue here, is really that we need to pass a budget so we can spend. And I'm wondering, does it make sense to do to go through all of this exercise of outdoor tent, if all we really need to do is do a 12-month budget? And that's sort of, it's a question of, is that the safest? Is there another alternative? Is really what I'm asking.
If I may, I would like to add, I don't know if there's a risk of you doing the 1/12. I think it's more about the limitations on the 1/12 and people having to understand that certain operations might not continue as of July 1st if we can't get them approved as part of the 1/12 budget.
For example,
As Joe mentioned, we're not really sure about the revolving fund, so we don't know if there would be, if Recreation Department would be able to offer any types of programs or services to the town if we can't get that approved. Any articles that were free cash, they wouldn't be able. I'm not against either one of them by any means. I just want people to understand the limitations. Another one too might be, whether we're, patent is another one that comes to mind. A patent is a transfer that goes from the general fund to the fund, to the patent fund. Are we going to be able to continue with that? I mean, these are just some examples that come to mind. And like I said, I still need some clarifications with the 1/12. We just got this Friday afternoon. I don't know if Tom, I know our town council is here. I don't know if he's aware of where they stand as far as revolving funds and whether we could, continue with our recreation operations or not. But there's still like some questions to be answered, and it's just the limitations.
Yeah.
Right.
Plus, I would just, if I may interject just a second, also the union contracts that Joe spoke about earlier would also be affected.
Right. There are a number of outstanding questions that we have, and we are in the process of working those out with the Department of Revenue. But you are correct that there are a number of issues that need to be clarified from the guidance that was issued on Friday afternoon. One other limitation that I did want to note with respect to the 1/12 budget is that while you are on a 1/12 budget, you cannot set your tax rate. So you would be able to issue the preliminary tax bills, obviously, but if you don't have a balanced budget in place and voted on by the fall, then that would obviously impact probably your ability to send out the actual tax bills in January.
Can I just jump in here sort of as an independent objective point? This is a great discussion, but we're going to be in this for probably the next 12 to 18 months. It's not like we're going to get to September and all of a sudden the world's going to open up. So this is going to be the new normal. And as I understand it, and Dave Smith can correct me, until at least 80% of the population has contracted or has proven immunity to COVID-19, or there is a vaccine or some other medical intervention that can protect all of us. So this isn't going to be like 3 months we can have town meeting as normal, or 6 months. It's going to be probably 18 to 24 months before that happens. So I think we've got to get used to actually having this kind of, got to resume to have as much normality as we can. And I think this is really important to do this town meeting.
I'll weigh in on that subject, by the way. I was about to say that myself, Rick, but I think it's really true. We shouldn't deceive ourselves into thinking, well, things are really going to change in a couple of months, and come July or August, life will be back to normal. That's absolutely not true. We're on a very gradual glide path here where I strongly suspect, you'll be able to test me on this, that come the time for a normal fall special town meeting, and let's say October, even November, I suspect we'll be facing relatively similar circumstances. Now, I hate the thought of forcing people to an outdoors town meeting in November, but it's conceivable that would still have to be the case. Things just don't approach this decision point from the perspective that, well, it's only going to be a month or two of this 1/12 budget every month. I think it's going, if that's the option we elect, I think you better anticipate and plan for that carrying for at least 6 months.
All right, good discussion, everybody. Would somebody like to make a motion?
On, well, okay, so I will make a motion that we tentatively approve the June 20th town meeting, ATM, followed by the June 25th town elections. With the caveat, I'm thinking here, with the caveat that we hear from the Board of Health after their next meeting. And then when we meet on Monday, we can just reiterate our vote, if all goes well.
I'll second that. And I think Bill Buller wanted to add something earlier. I don't know if he still wants to comment, but I'll let him now if he wants.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think you can count on the moderator to keep people on a very short leash.
Yes.
If we have I'm thinking like Twitter, like 140 characters.
Yep.
So.
I think that's good, Bill.
All right, so we have a motion that's been seconded. Joe, does that give you and Marissa enough direction to do what you need to do?
I think it does. It also gives us the ability to, converse a little bit with Wenham tomorrow and let them know that, you are still aiming for June 20th. It's something we look at. I'll start first thing tomorrow with Bill Olson, Bill Bowler, and whoever the FinCom wants to assign to this task. We need somebody from the school department. We need police, fire, council on aging, all to be involved in the conversation. Board of Health, I think David Smith volunteered to join us for that. We got 3 or 4 members. We need to fill out the rest of the committee and then start getting all the stuff in place. And I would say I want Mr. Melville to be on it. I hope he's paying attention. I know HWCAM is on the Zoom meeting and he's broadcasting this, but I think that having the input of our local cable access folks who will both be charged with filming this outdoors meeting, but also helping us spread the word about it and trying to get people to be engaged with the process. So.
Joe, one question just for purposes of really open meeting law compliance. Is this an ad hoc committee that's going to essentially just report back to you? It's not being created by the Board of Selectmen.
It is not being, it was suggested by the Board of Selectmen that the town manager create an ad hoc committee to undertake the planning of the annual town meeting for June 20th. And I will report back to them.
Will we need to make any kind of motion, Tom? We make any kind of motion for town manager to appoint members or anything like that?
No, I would recommend not doing that because I think at that point, then it becomes a more formal committee that would be subject to the open meeting law.
Right.
Here, as I understand it, it's just the town manager is essentially putting together a group of individuals to provide him with some advice, which he can then make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen and to the moderator in terms of how best to safely conduct a town meeting.
Thanks, Tom, for helping us toe that line.
We still need to vote.
We have a motion. It's been seconded. Is there any further discussion?
So I'd like to add that I would volunteer to help out as well as another helper kind of a person. So,
you can call me tomorrow. You don't have to. They don't have to know.
Nobody wants to know. That's fine.
All right, great. So we'll take a roll call vote then. We'll start with Darcy.
Darcy Dale, aye.
All right, Bill Olson.
William Olson, aye.
Sean Farrell.
Sean Farrell, aye.
Rosemary Kennedy.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Jeff Hubbard, aye. All right, excellent. Good discussion. And we're going to do the right thing here and I think set a good standard. All right, the next item up then is to discuss and review the proposed warrant for the potential changes.
All right, thank you, everybody. I am a little, Jeff, if you don't mind, I'll just say, I sent over the weekend what I thought was the latest version, but I was pointed out to me today that was an error, and Tom McEnany had sent me the updated version. I'm going to attempt to share this to the screen from my I'm going to attempt to share this somehow, and if I can.
Yeah, I did read the version you sent me about 3 times looking for articles in 3.3 and etc.
Yeah. Which nobody said that I was an expert at that stuff. Let me see. Here we go. Boom. Did everybody see that?
I can barely, oh,
There we go. Yep. Yep.
All right, so you're looking at the index then of what is the latest version, and figured this would be one way to go through this item here on the agenda. This is the index for the proposed warrant that you voted at previously with several changes. If you want to, we could go in order of the articles and just cite whether they'd stay, go, or join a consent agenda. And
Yeah, it makes sense.
anybody want to
No, I
disagree
guess
with that
maybe-
motion, or you want to just go in that direction?
I guess just a clarification on it. In your email earlier, you had kind of two sections. One was you recommended kind of certain numbers would fall off or articles would fall off, and then there's a second bunch of numbers that you thought would potentially fall off, or was it for consent? I didn't quite.
There were several others that I thought could be for consent agenda. When I met earlier in my bi-weekly meeting with Darcy and David, and we talked about if we got to this point in the meeting and we were moving forward with June 20th, we went over several of these articles. So I'm happy to let David and Darcy refer to their notes as we go through this. I certainly don't need to be the only person talking. Obviously, the first three articles are kind of standard. I think that it's up to the board and the town moderator if you wanted to have the vote on Article 1-2 would just simply be to accept the reports, the written reports, and place them on file and not have anybody give reports. I think that was already mentioned that you want to get away from opening remarks and those types of things. And then Article 1-3 is an article for consent motion. So I think that that would be a big help in trying to limit the number of votes we actually have to take. If we can propose a number of articles for consent agenda, then we can take those all up with one vote. And I think David and Darcy were of the similar mind that a lot of the articles that we're considering moving forward with in this amended agenda or amended warrant would be possible candidates for that consent agenda.
Joe, this is Tom. So as you may know, there's a pending bill that the Senate passed, which was sent over to the House. It's Senate Bill 2680. And what that bill does is it proposes to reduce the quorum requirement to no less than 10% of your normal quorum. If the Board of Selectmen in consultation and with the approval of the moderator agree to do so. So, and if the town were to proceed in that direction, then you're limited in terms of the types of articles that you can take up. You can only take up matters related to the budget or as necessary to meet federal deadlines, for example, like FEMA maps. If there was a specific deadline that you had to approve your FEMA maps by, you could act on those types of items. That bill is pending. So depending upon how that comes out, and there are a number of questions in terms of what constitutes articles that are specifically related to a budget and how broadly that would be construed. But that is a potential option if the town were interested in, assuming that the legislation does pass, if the town were interested in kind of heading in that direction to really
so I
tear
think,
down
I think once we, so I think, it's good. Once we figure out all the articles, you can then look at it and see if those all meet the requirement of the bill, and we can decide if we can do that. So I think that's a good opportunity.
And as far as the reducing the quorum, I think while it's helpful in the perspective of making sure we attain a quorum, I know that a lot of the conversation tonight was also geared around disenfranchisement and making sure people felt that they could be there, or that their voices could be heard if we take this up. So I think that it'd be up to the Board of Selectmen, but from what I heard at the FinCom meeting and even from what I've heard some of the selectmen say, I don't know that there's necessarily an appetite to reduce the quorum. I think most people are comfortable that we could probably get to the 75, and that alone is already kind of making people feel like we're limiting participation. If we go forward with this, my plan is to have seats for 150. 75 is our quorum, but I don't want people to feel that they have to stay away. We want to make sure that we're big enough to accommodate whoever feels comfortable coming. So I definitely don't want to contribute to a perception of disenfranchisement at all. So
No, certainly. And I think that option was put out there in the event that there were a number of towns, obviously, that expressed concern about whether or not they would be able to achieve a quorum. So if there's no real concern that you would be able to achieve the necessary quorum, then there would be really no reason to reduce the number.
Right, because I think last time we spoke, Tom, you had mentioned a town with 300 was their quorum, and they thought they might have a problem with that, but ours is, I feel ours is pretty low as it is at 75. So I don't
Yes.
see us not reaching.
There's no sports going on, so
Yes.
That is true.
So Joe, I think we have to get it sounds like we need to make 4 buckets, right? The bucket number 1 is yes, we want on the warrant, it can go consent motion. Number 2 is yes, on the warrant, needs a vote. Number 3 is the maybes, and number 4 is the definite that we can take off the warrants. I think the largest discussion is going to be around like the 2s and the 3s. So we probably should go through and figure out, the 4 buckets these things fall into, and then we can go back and discuss the ones that don't have a clear.
So on Friday or Saturday of last week, I think it was Friday morning, I sent along an email that included kind of some of my brief ideas just to generate discussion for you.
Correct,
And that was the same group of conversations, recommendations that Darcy, David, and I worked our way through earlier today. Darcy, do you want to?
Well, I was going to suggest, David, do you want to kind of keep an eye on on what I'm about to say? Because I know you have notes. Are you still there, David Wanger?
Yes.
Oh,
here,
good.
Present.
So,
physically.
yes, well, that's a good thing.
To start.
2-1, 2-3. I know 2-6 is the school. 2-7, 2-8. Those are all considered candidates to be on a consent agenda. Is that right?
Yeah,
I think.
And possibly the schools, if depending on which route they take.
Right.
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we were looking at 2-1 actually is vote of prior year bills. We don't have any prior year bills, so I had originally suggested that could be removed. But 2-2, 2-3, sorry, 2-3 is capital expenditures, so that was going to be removed and pushed off to the town meeting. But 2-2, 2-4, potentially 2-5 and 2-6, depending on what happens with the schools. 2-7, 2-8 are all financial articles. The 2-9 is the community preservation budget. The only portion of that budget that we'd be looking for is potentially some administration, some costs associated with that administration. As you know, so we don't have any requests for us, but just to allow somebody to help them do their work. 2-10 and 2-12, 2-14, 2-15 would all be able to be on the consent agenda. 2-16 is personnel services and union contracts. If we go forward with the 2 carryover agreements, as mentioned earlier, then we could take the money from 2-16 and put it into the departmental budgets, and we could get rid of this article altogether. It could be removed. And that takes care of those items. And we would have to have votes, we believe, on 2-11. Hamilton Development Corporation has taken a straw poll, and they're subject to their having a confirmatory vote. Their membership is in agreement to reduce their request from all of the meals tax to something less. I believe David might have more information on that from his discussions with Rick. Rick might have more information on that. He's here as well. The Patton Homestead budget would have to be a separate vote. So right now we'd be looking at, a consent agenda, a vote on the budget, which may or may not include a separate vote with the schools. A vote on the water enterprise. No, the water enterprise would go on the consent agenda as well. A vote on the HDC, a vote on the Patton Homestead, and in that section 2, financial actions, that would be pretty much the total number of votes you might need, 4 votes to get through all those items, with most of them staying but being rolled into a consent agenda, and 3 of them being cut out.
I think that works. And just a question for Joe and Tom, since he's online. Should we make a motion to reopen our warrant right now?
Yeah, that probably makes sense.
So if I'm assuming we have to, so I make a motion that we reopen our warrant.
Second.
Our June 20th ATM.
Second.
Do roll call vote?
Oh, Darcy
Hello?
Dale, aye.
William Olson, aye.
Sean Farrell, aye.
Rosie?
Rosie Kennedy, I.
And Jeff Hubbard, aye.
Okay. All right, so you vote, reopen the warrant. Sorry, I already got ahead of us and started
okay.
talking about that items.
I just didn't want to get too far before we.
And the second section, which is now renumbered as section 3, other appropriations and actions. Item number
Joe?
3 dash, yep.
Do you mind if I just, before you
Yep.
move to section 3, can I just add a couple of comments to section 2?
Yep.
So on the community preservation budget, there would actually be more than just the admin costs, because even if we don't have any projects, we do have to appropriate at least 10% into different categories.
Okay.
So there will be a little more there. And as far as the Article 216, we, as you know, I believe it's fire and the admin contracts, they do include education incentives, and that's where that money is being appropriated. So
I thought we had discussed a different line item that could move to if the only thing that's going to be left in that was that vote.
for all the other items, yes, but not on these specific ones. So we had an estimate for the 2 contracts that are up for negotiations, and those were, if you extend it for a year, then we would be able to move those into the individual departments. But these are items that we don't know whether they're going to be spent or not, because we don't know whether people will be taking advantage of the education incentive or not.
Could we account for those in the salary reserve line item in the budget?
That's what that is.
Oh, that's separate. So you have a separate vote on the salary reserve?
We do. That's what that article is. It would be minimal because, we would be reducing it. So let's say maybe it's $5,000-$6,000. So maybe it would be something that you could put on a consent agenda.
Keep it in the consent agenda then. All right, so then we wouldn't be asking you to remove 216 next week. We'll probably be asking you to leave it there, but with a much smaller appropriation to cover previously negotiated benefits and the admin and fire contracts, which are for educational reimbursement in those departments. So thank you, Marissa. Sorry, I misunderstood
Could
our
I ask
discussion.
could I ask a question, just clarification?
Of course.
2-11, would be on the consent agenda.
I think that we'd be looking for the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom to tell us what they want to do there. I know that the HDC had suggested that they'd be willing to reduce the request there, but I hadn't heard that I wasn't sure if that should be on a consent. I wasn't sure if that should be on a consent agenda or not.
I'd be interested in an explanation on that. That's all, at the appropriate time.
An explanation about it being on
about why it was, just back when the town adopted the meals tax, it was with the clear expectation that it would go for downtown improvements. So if there's going to be a change in that, I think it should be explained at town meeting and not be put on the consent agenda. So.
Thank you, Mr. Bowler. That's kind of reason why I didn't really necessarily know if it was going towards a consent agenda or not.
I just wasn't clear to me where it was going to go. So
I think that would probably be a separate vote unless both boards felt strongly that it could be rolled into the consent agenda.
Okay. Thank you.
And of course, once it's been moved to be on the consent motion, it can always be held. As you're reading them out, somebody could always vote to hold that and take it up separately.
But not by the town moderator.
No, that's true. Yeah. You're telling me you couldn't plant somebody in the room to hold that for you?
Joe, maybe
yes.
I could give a short explanation to Bill about that.
Yeah.
So, Bill, the practice had been each year by April ATM to use the prior full year meal tax as the appropriation. Sometimes there was slippage and that wasn't always done. So for our April 2020 town meeting, the ATM, which is come and gone, of course, the initial appropriation was 75,000, which was the meal tax for fiscal 19, I think. I approached Rick Mitchell and asked him, in the spirit of what we've been attempting to do town-wide, to see if there could be some moderation in that $75,000 appropriation, given the circumstances we are in. Rick and I had a conversation, and as a result, he had initially agreed, pending his poll of his board, and now ultimately confirmed informally and will be subject to a formal vote, to reduce that appropriation from 75 to 50 in the spirit of true cooperation with all of our efforts to trim the budget. But the intent is to use that money as it was originally envisioned, that is for downtown development. So there's no change in the intent. There's just a cooperative reduction in the amount for fiscal 21.
Yeah, to be quite blunt.
Thanks for the explanation.
Yeah, Bill, if I could just add to that, to be quite blunt, we're projecting, that meals tax will suffer some in the coming fiscal year. No matter what happens when restaurants do reopen, there'll be social distancing requirements that potentially, at least for portions of the year, will be requirements of utilizing less than 100% of seating capacity. So we anticipate that there would be a corresponding decrease in receipts that way. So I appreciate that the Hamilton Development Corporation recognizes that other departments across the town are cutting their requests, and their offer to do the same is helpful to us. So
Again, thanks for the explanation.
Okay, are we able to move on to section 3, the newly renumbered section 3?
I guess, are we going to vote on it as a whole? I just don't want to get too far ahead and too confused on what's going in consent and what's going in taking off until fall ATM, et cetera. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what the plan is here.
Okay. Do you want to vote on the section that we just went through, and then we'll prepare and amend this budget to reflect that for next Monday?
Yeah, I mean, I think if everyone's okay with that, it'd be easier for me to kind of keep track of it as I'm kind of writing stuff down here. But I'm up for whatever the board feels.
I think from FinCom's approach, I think this is true. The more we can fit into consent, the better, consistent with our general desire, everyone's desire to expedite this process. As Joe indicates, something can always be held by one, as I understand it, by one person shouting hold.
Right. And so I think for my note-taking capacity here, if before we move on, we can just kind of do a summary of what's consent and what's dropping off of the warrant until fall ATM, that would be very helpful for me personally anyway.
Or if we could get a list.
Can I read what I have in my notes and have anybody tell me if you think differently for the consent agenda?
Sounds good.
Sure.
Okay, so that's changed based on some of the information we just had, particularly from Marissa. But right now we'd be recognizing that what is currently Article 2-2, 2-4, 2-5, and 2-6, depending on what the school department budget amended budget looks like. 2-7, 2-8, 2-9, 2-10, 2-11, 2-12, 2-14, 2-15, and 2-16 would all be recommended for a consent motion Again, the caveat there with 2.5 and 2.6 is that we don't know yet today what the school department is going to be recommending after they meet this week and then vote next week. But if they're reducing their request to the town to affect the assessment, and we feel that it's commensurate with what the town's been trying to do, you could propose to put all that in one budget question instead of having two, the way you had previously done so. So I would.
Pardon me, Joe, just for clarity, I think both 2.4 and 2.5 are
Should be voted separately? Okay.
Contingent upon what the school does. Because if the school is not cooperative,
right,
then we're back to the 5% or approach for 2.4, and then the balance of the school in 2.5.
So the list I read minus those three articles, 2.4, 2.5, and 2.6. So that list I just read, 2.2, 2.7, 2.8, 2.9, 2.10, 2.11, 2.12, 2.14, 2.15, and 2.16 for the consent motion. And the other articles would be 2.1, 2.5 would be pushed off, taken out of the agenda, taken out of the warrant, and then the other articles would be voted separately. So 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, 2.6. No, not 2.3. Sorry, that's out. 2.4, 2.5, and 2.6. 2.13 would be separate votes.
Yeah. And Joe, you said there were no prior year bills, so we could just
no prior year bills, so we can just remove it.
And then I think to David's point about the kind of influx about the school department.
Yeah.
You know, I would suggest we don't close the warrant tonight, and we wait to hear and see what's going on. That we can always amend.
Yeah, I was hoping that you would keep it open until next week, and we can finalize all the stuff on next Monday night. My understanding is that the budget, a new budget, will be proposed to the school committee this week, and then they'll vote on it. They'll take a vote on it next week, but we'll have a sense of what direction they're going in with their budget Wednesday or Thursday this week.
Just if I may, just to so the board understands what I think we discussed last Thursday. The state has apparently indicated a reduction in state aid for schools of about 1.3 million. Is that correct, Joe?
I think what we were saying was that the indication is that based on the roundtable discussion we had with our state legislators and stuff, we're recognizing that state aid Chapter 70 could be reduced, and they were anticipating potentially an $800,000 reduction there. And then we're also recognizing that in past years when there have been recessions, state has gone after things like circuit breaker and transportation. So transportation reimbursement. So if all those things were to come to pass, it would be potentially a hit to the town, to the school budget. We have since separately learned that the school committee had asked the superintendent and the leadership team to reduce the budget by $1.3 million. My question upon hearing that was, would that $1.3 million have any impact on Hamilton and Wenham, or would it only kind of contemplate what the potential state reductions would be? Not knowing that until this is proposed, until we have the new budget proposal in front of us, it's possible that the state's impact on the budget could be as much as 1.3, which would equal all of what they're trying to cut out of their budget. It's also possible that it would be something like 800,000, and there'd be a $500,000 savings that the towns of Hamilton and Wenham could benefit from. So I think there's still there's some gray area there. That's why I'm waiting to see what the schools do.
Okay, shall we go on with the listing?
Are we voting on this tonight, or are we just?
No, I think this is for, if you give me a straw vote, if you think I'm going in the right direction and I have that right, we will prepare this for you to vote on next week.
Great, perfect.
Want to take a straw vote?
Sure.
How do we do that again?
I think since this isn't something for the minute, you can just tell me, Board of Selectmen and FinCom, is that the right direction that we're looking in? Basically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 items in this section would be part of a consent motion. 2 items would be removed, and 3 to 4 others would have separate votes. 4 others would have separate votes.
Yeah, I guess I'll kind of kick it off for the straw vote. I'll say that I support the changes recommended in our discussion for all articles within section 2.
I'm favorable to that.
I'm favorable.
Bill? Darcy, Bill, Rosie?
Favorable. That'd be,
Okay.
yeah, favorable to that.
Favorable.
Anyone from FinCom not favorable?
Nope, I'm in favor.
So hearing no nos.
Okay, so it looks like we're on the right track for section 2. That leaves us section 3, which I think gets a little bit more, there's a few more things we could take off and a few things that we have to have you discuss. Article that's now numbered, warrant article number 3-1 is a lease of town land on Chabaca Road. This would be for the marsh rats to use the area they had previously used as a shotgun club range. It has a slight financial benefit in that it would provide about $15,000 of revenue to the town. But it's certainly not something that we have to have. It's not counted. I don't believe Marissa will slap me upside my head if I'm wrong on this, but I don't believe we're counting it as revenue in this year just yet. So if the boards and the FinCom do not feel that it's prudent to have a discussion about this and they want to put it off to the fall, I have already advised the marsh rats that may be an outcome and their understanding of that. So.
Are they currently using the site, Joe?
No. Nope.
Waiting on us for the lease at the town meeting, huh?
Yep.
David or Marissa, do you have any comments on that?
If the general philosophy being to reduce this list as much as possible for June 20, I would support not proceeding with it. Unless the thought is that this could be part of consent and just be summarily approved.
Good idea.
I don't think it's worthy of a debate on the floor. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think it can be a part of consent because it requires a 2/3
Okay.
vote.
Thank you. Then under
I
that,
think Bill's right.
thank you, Bill. Then under that circumstance, I think we might defer this.
I agree.
Okay. So defer to special town meeting. Is that the direction we want to go with that? I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Article number 3-2 is an application of bond premiums. I believe that also needs a 2/3 vote. Is that right, Tom? Bill? Somebody?
I'm not quite sure what that, what that involves. So I really can't say.
It seems
Joe,
like a 2/3, but I don't know.
Yeah, in my opinion, it does not require a 2/3 vote. It's not a borrowing. It's essentially just to allow the town to apply proceeds from the sale of bonds or notes to the outstanding print, to apply any premium from the sale to the cost of issuance of bonds or notes or otherwise to pay down the debt. So
would this be something that would?
I'm sorry, say that again.
So would this be something that could potentially be put into the consent motion?
I think it could. I would expect, and I don't know how much borrowing this really affects, but any new borrowings that you've done since the Municipal Modernization Act probably had this language in the motion already. So in most cases, it's already kind of been taken care of. And I think this is just more of a belt and suspenders type article that bond counsel is recommending in the event that there is some outstanding debt that perhaps hasn't been covered or that vote hadn't been taken previously.
If I may add, that's exactly what it is. It was a recommendation from bond counsel because we did have votes that did not include the language.
So are people okay with putting that as a consent motion then?
I think so.
Okay. 3-3 is a change in one of our local adoptions. I'm recommending that be put off to special town meeting. The same thing goes with Article 3-4.
Yep.
No changes there?
Can
Um,
we,
Yeah,
sorry, could we put 3-4 under consent by any chance?
Tom? I thought there was a lot of discussion there. I was concerned about having this one on the town meeting warrant before April, so I'm not.
I think the one that would have a lot of discussion is the 3-3.
3-3?
Is actually just a correction. There was one word that was missed at the last vote. That's it.
Tom, you agree with that?
I'm sorry, for 3-4?
Yes.
3-4, there was one word that was missed at the last town meeting on the article. So it's really clean up, to be honest with you. The one that I think would generate a lot of discussion would be the 3-3.
Yeah, the other one was housekeeping.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't have any objection to including it on a consent calendar but I would defer to the moderator. If it's an issue that people feel is going to engender some debate, then you probably wouldn't want to include it. But if it's something that is going to pass, relatively easily without any real discussion, then it's certainly appropriate to include it on a consent agenda.
I don't have I have to be honest, I haven't read the actual article, so I think if it's just a change in one word, I think it's great. And as someone pointed out earlier, if I think that people are going to want to talk about it, I've probably got one friend in the audience that'll put a hold on it for me. So.
Okay, so I'll go forward with planning to have 3-4 in the consent agenda and move 3-3 to a future town meeting.
Right.
3-5, which has a typo in it because it says 34-5, but 3-5 is a pilot for solar array atop the Manchester water plant. I would like this vote to be taken. I don't know whether it can go into a consent agenda because it deals with a pilot agreement, so I think it may need a higher vote threshold. But this is related to the town of Manchester, long desirous of having a solar array put on top of their water plant. Their water plant is in the town of Hamilton, and as such, we have to approve the pilot. That would mean a small amount of money to the town. I think it's about $1,000 in the first year, and then depreciation of the asset reduces each year over the course of the solar. Each year over the course of the pilot agreement, but the vast majority of this benefits the town of Manchester and their operation of their water plant. They had originally asked me to sign the pilot, the solar agreement in February, and I pointed out to them, or January, and I pointed out to them that I needed a town meeting vote to do that. So they've been waiting on us quite a while for this. In the spirit of helping them move forward with that project, I'd like to see us take it up. Tom, does this need, in your estimation, do we need a supermajority of some kind, or can this go into a consent?
No, yeah, you could certainly include this on a consent agenda again with the same caveat that if it's something that you don't anticipate that there will be a lot of discussion on, it's just a majority vote to authorize the pilot agreement.
I think the only issue I have with this one is that I think if I was coming to town meeting, unless there was an explanation behind it beforehand, I'd be wondering why we were approving something in Manchester on their water.
In the written document that will go out to all taxpayers.
Yes.
So maybe
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, as long as it's in the FinComs and recommendations and everything like that, I think it's fine on the consent. I just want to make sure it's clear because, someone's bound to have a question on it if they don't read the FinCom recommendations.
Right.
Joe, may I ask just a quick question about consent items? Is there some intermediate ability without holding to ask just what does this mean? Can someone from the floor ask for an explanation without a hold?
No, I think they would ask for a hold and just ask for an explanation, and then if they're satisfied with the explanation, they can just release the hold. So, I mean, it could be done pretty quickly if it's just a question. So.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. That's, I think, how most towns do it, where if something's in a consent agenda and someone has a question on it, they can ask for a hold. If the question is answered satisfactorily, they can just essentially release the hold. It can remain in the consent agenda and does not have to be taken out.
Thank you. And Bill Bowler, perhaps that could be explained so that people understand.
Yeah, yeah, I think that makes sense.
Next item is 3-6, which is my request for master plan. I'm proposing that we put this off to special town meeting. It's a expenditure from capital, from free cash, and we've made the commitment to put all those types of votes off to a special town meeting in the future. So I would make a motion to move that off, a recommendation to move that off. I can't make a motion. And then that will leave only the 3-7, the citizens petition. I think that my understanding from town council and from town clerks is that based on the fact that there are different requirements for getting a citizens petition onto an annual town meeting versus a special, we have to take this issue up at town meeting. It can't be put on a consent agenda. Mr. Wanger did have an idea earlier that I don't know if he wants to share it with you all, but
yes,
we have to leave this a separate item.
At great risk, I will attempt to share it. What we talked about this afternoon was since we have the town has voluntarily reverted to every week from every other week, what if we were to go to the proponent of this citizen petition and say, explain what we're trying to do in terms of making this a meaningful but very quick exercise on the 20th. So we would we would agree to maintain every week until the fall town meeting or the STM, whatever it's called. If the proponent would withdraw with the understanding that he or others certainly may raise this again at the next town meeting.
So to address that, unfortunately, there is no way to withdraw a citizen's petition article once it's been submitted and on the warrant. And the rationale behind that is that there are other people perhaps that would have been interested in petitioning the same article, but they didn't bother to do so because there's already a warrant article that is included on the warrant and has to be included on the warrant pursuant to General Law Chapter 39. So there is, even if you have the consent of the individual who was kind of the primary proponent of the article, you cannot, unfortunately, take it off the warrant. What you can do, however, is at town meeting, if the proponent is willing to kind of hopefully be there and get up at town meeting and say, you know, I petitioned this article after, but at this point, I'm asking for it to be, you know, to just be passed over and the town meeting not take action on it, and then have an explanation why, then that would be really the only way to kind of address that issue, unfortunately.
Well, thank you. That still leaves an opportunity for expeditious handling. If one could say to the proponent, the town will agree to maintain every week. We're asking you at town meeting to stand up and move to defer this as council just suggested, with the understanding that there's no prejudice to his raising it again.
The only point I would say, though, is that if we vote to pass over the article at the annual town meeting, then that article is dead at that point. So if the proponents wanted to have it on the special town meeting warrant, then they would have to go through the process to get the requisite number of signatures to bring that back. Unless the alternative would be if the Board of Selectmen, for example, decided to put that on the warrant, they could choose to do so. But if the proponent, if that's not the case, then the proponent's going to have to go back through the petition process and get the requisite number of signatures, which is significantly higher for a special town meeting than an annual.
Well, all right. I'll be guided by what you all wish in this regard. This is a contentious issue in town. It's likely to spark significant discussion, assuming that we go forward on the 20th and people attend. I'm willing to try to defer this, consistent with what council has just told us in terms of process. But if you all say no, let's just keep it on, that's fine with me also.
Right.
Can I ask a question? So are you saying, Tom, that if the Board of Selectmen votes to just have it with the proponent's agreement to just postpone it until the special town meeting, then they don't need to get the higher number of signatures? Do I understand that correctly?
So it would not necessarily really be a postponement of their particular article. Essentially, what the board would have to do would be to agree essentially to include this article on there, even if it's an article that the board perhaps did not support. So
you'd sponsor a new article.
It would be really kind of I guess a handshake type of an agreement whereby the Board of Selectmen would say, okay, if you agree essentially to support passing over the article now at the annual town meeting in light of the current circumstances, we agree that at a special town meeting to be held in the fall or winter, whenever the special town meeting is going to be held, the Board of Selectmen will agree to put your article as it's currently drafted on the warrant for consideration by town meeting. And it's really just a handshake agreement at that point. Otherwise, the folks who are the proponents of this article would have to go back through the process of getting the requisite signatures, which again is significantly higher for a special town meeting warrant than an annual.
Right.
Okay, so it doesn't necessarily mean that we're supporting it. It does not mean that we're supporting it. It just means that we're agreeing to put it on the special town meeting. That sounds that sounds like a fair solution. Okay, thank you.
I guess just a couple of more comments / questions on that. As far as I think signatures for ATM, it's really low. It's like 10 or so, and then STM is 100 or more, I think, which is a significant difference. But 200, right, Rosie? Sorry. But if we did the kind of handshake like you said, Tom, would it be on the warrant as a citizen's petition in STM, or would it be a board sponsored article? I mean, we could still, as a board, even if we did sponsor it, we could still recommend not to support it. But how would it be listed?
It would be listed as a board sponsored article, in my opinion. At that point, I think your warrant includes a comment section. So I think certainly, as well as recommendations from the Board of Selectmen, FinCom, and any other relevant boards and committees. So I think you can certainly include in the commentary that this article is being included on the warrant because of essentially the agreement that was made with respect to the annual town meeting and et cetera. So, and then it could include, if the board supports it, obviously the vote would reflect that. If not, then you could certainly indicate that the board voted not to approve it and include that in the warrant as well.
So I guess on this, David Wanger, if you're willing to, and the board is willing to let you, will you work with that petitioner and see if the board's okay with it, we can discuss it more. But doing that kind of agreement that we move it to fall ATM and it becomes a board sponsored warrant article. But the question is, whether the board supports it or not will be determined at that time.
Can I complicate the matter a little bit? I just received an email from the sponsor of that article. He's listening in real time, but not on the Zoom call. He must be watching it on the stream on YouTube or on HWCam. Thank you, Larry, for watching. he has suggested that, well, I don't want to get into it because it kind of would start a whole negotiation here. Seems like the board is going in the direction of asking Mr. Wanger to reach out to Mr. Sargent to have a conversation, a discussion. I've just forwarded the email from the sponsor to Mr. Wanger, and so you know that conversation's already started.
Right, and I guess since the warrant's open and we're not closing it tonight, we've got some wiggle room here for negotiation.
I would just like to ask any member of FinCom whether they have any objection to this undertaking.
I think that's fine. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm good with it.
I agree as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
And just for clarification, it's 10 signatures for an annual. It's 100 for inclusion on the special town meeting.
Okay.
The 200 signature requirement is something different. That's to compel essentially a town meeting to
Okay.
be held.
Okay.
So I'm willing to do this, of course. I'd like Tom, if he might email me exactly the details so that I don't mislead. I would appreciate that.
Sure, that's fine. I'll get your email through Joe.
Thank you.
And then just kind of to close the loop here, David suggested part of the negotiation be that we maintain the kind of status quo weekly pickup until fall ATM, wherever that may fall. Is the rest of the board okay with that?
Of course. Sure.
And FinCom?
Anyone object?
I'm fine with that.
Fine with that too.
I would prefer to leave that off and that the negotiation be, that the agreement be, they agree to postpone the vote and the town agrees to put the petition on the vote in special town meeting. But it's a weird way to have a negotiation that was already offered basically.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah.
So if to summarize real quickly, if my basic math skills are right, what we've just walked through is a reduction or a change in the warrant by reducing 2 items, or by removing 2 items completely. Oh no, sorry, removing 1 item completely, moving 1, 2, 3, 4 items to special town meeting, and placing 14 items on a consent motion, which would reduce the entire town meeting to about 8 votes.
Pending, of course.
Pending, of course, nothing gets held by during the consent motion.
Pending, Joe, also what happens with the school this year.
Right. Because that could go down if the schools, you'd have 1 budget vote instead of 2 or 3. So if the schools and us come to some agreement on the budget for FY21, then you could reduce that again. Yeah, so it could be as much as a total of 8 votes, potentially still a few less than that.
And Joe, on your screen share there, are we missing just 3.7 or are there other things that I can't see on the screen?
No, there's no other after 3.7. Hold on. Ooh. Just what did I do?
But I think that was it, Sean. I think that was the entirety.
Yeah.
Citizen
petition was the last one. Citizen petition was the last one on the warrant. So.
And Joe, you'll send us kind of a summary.
Yeah, I hope to have it to you before Wednesday. I hope to have you a summary of this on before Wednesday.
And then as far as with Marissa, with some budget modifications, when do you expect that? Not to pressure or anything like that, but just curious. I mean, I guess some of it depends on the schools as well.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. It all depends on the schools and what our total budget is going to be. I'm going to start working on the calculations. I mean, I'm already working on the calculations, and based on the conversations that we had today, I'll make sure to continue going in that direction. But I think in order to be able to finalize it, I'll have to wait until the school votes their revised budget.
And when are they voting on that, Joe? Do you know?
As I said, according to the email that I received from Dr. Kuchenberger last week, the school committee had charged her and the leadership team with producing a revised budget with $1.3 million in reductions this week, which they would hear and then vote on next week. So that's what I know.
All right. Final item on the agenda is the review of the fiscal year 21 budget proposal changes.
Okay, so keeping in mind what Marissa said earlier about the kind of all the moving parts in this, every time we move or change one thing in the budget, it affects other things in the spreadsheet. So, but we have been working to reduce town side spending for FY21, cognizant of a couple things. One, we're expecting reductions in levels of revenue based on what we had been expecting for FY21. And then now that we've been through the pandemic and the ensuing start of this new recession, we're projecting less revenue for FY21 than we had been prior to March. Wanting to be able to address that shortfall in revenue and propose a responsible budget for FY21. Marissa and I started work with the department heads to cut to reduce spending in all areas of the budget that we had control over, and we've come up with to this point about $420,000 in reductions on the town side. A lot of different things have gone into that. We'll have a more complete budget proposal for you next week, but another component of this isn't related to the revenue, but it is related to the way our spending impacts our tax rate. As you know, I'm fond of saying that we back into the tax rate because the tax rate is a function of what you approve for budget versus what we bring in and what the valuation of the property is. In trying to determine what FY21 would look like, we not only looked at what might happen with revenue production, but we also looked at what would happen to the value of property in town. Based on the advice from our town assessors, it's expected that we had been projecting an increase of valuations of about 2.5% for FY21. We're now going to project that to say flat. So if we were to, I could sit here and tell you that I could propose the same budget we had before mid-March, and we could probably raise that. But what it would do to our tax rate was it would send it well over $18 per thousand. Wanting to be responsible, wanting to bring our budget into line with what our new revenue projections, and wanting to make sure that we don't, in an environment where there's a lot of economic turmoil and financial factors beyond our control, wanting to be able to control that tax rate a little bit. Instead of backing into it, we're trying to look at it as we set the new budget. So the goal for us was to reduce spending across the entire town budget by $1 million. Given that the school department is 60% of the town's budget, we would hope that the school department would share in that cutting. We have hit more than our 40%. I had originally asked the departments to try to get to $500,000. There's a couple of things left to do that we may be able to get up from 420 to closer to $500,000 in savings for the town. But the schools department develops its own budget, presents it to us, and in some way, shape, or form, you bring it to town meeting. I'm hopeful that we'll get some recognition of that fact in the new school budget, and that we'll be able to propose one budget article that reasonably, responsibly looks at our projected revenue and helps us live within our means. Absent that, you may be forced to consider continuing forward with the plan to do two budget questions, which would be a budget for the town plus X% for the schools, and a budget for a secondary budget for the schools above that X%, because we just don't feel it's responsible to project all of that out. But the schools have the right to ask for it. So that's kind of where we're at. Schools and some of the shared programs are the only places we haven't really found a lot of savings yet, but we're still talking with Wenham on the other shared services. So it's really just the schools and those other shared services to make up the rest of that. And Marissa can clear up whatever I misstated, as she so aptly does most of the time.
Joe, if I might add, the department heads are to be complimented for their effort. I think that should be recognized. They have acted very responsibly with clear sensitivity to the situation. We're looking to the same attitude demonstrated by the schools.
I agree. The department has really stepped up. They dug deep. They found ways to propose things that would allow us to continue to provide the level of services we come to expect. It's not to say that it's not without pain, and it's not to say that there won't be some changes. There will be. You can't make these kinds of changes. We weren't growing the budget very much to begin with, so you can't make these kind of changes without seeing some kind of impact on the way we do our business. But we're trying to be a little bit more efficient. We're trying to take advantage of some opportunities that have arisen in the last 8 weeks and utilize those to our benefit. We had proposed, for instance, a new firefighter in the department. We're still proposing that, but we delay the hiring of that firefighter. Those extra months that we go without that firefighter would save us money. We have a couple of retirements in the department. We're proposing that one of those retirements be also put off for several months so that we could see a savings there. The other one would be hired right away, but there's some additional savings there. I've reorganized, or we're proposing some reorganization in town hall for things to make sure that all of the departments and all the boards and committees can continue to be served, but with taking advantage of voluntary retirement that could help us share the load. We're also going to step back and withdraw. We had, you'll recall that at the special town meeting, yourselves, the FinCom, and the town meeting last fall endorsed the idea of growing the community projects position into a full-time position so that it could do some other things. I'm going to reorganize that. We're going to basically strike most of that from the budget, but we're going to grow the position in my office. When Michelle becomes the Regional Human Resources Director, I'll replace her with somebody that can also do grants, can also do some coordination of activities for the CPC and the Affordable Housing Trust and the HDC, or the HHDC, the Historic District Commission, so that we can have some more continuity there. And, everybody's going to just do a little bit more with a little bit less, is the kind of summation of it.
And Joe, I was negligent before when I complimented the department heads, which is absolutely the correct attribution. Their views, I'm sure, reflect the views of the employees. So I think we all ought to recognize that we're fortunate to have a complement of people working for us who recognize that we are all in this together and are being cooperative beyond what one might otherwise expect. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
David,
I'm trying to respond to it. Yeah.
All right, is there any other further discussion on this? This time, okay.
So may I be the first then? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have more substance? Oh, then I was going to ask for a motion from FinCom to adjourn.
Oh, I would like to bring up a couple things and just under kind of general business. We didn't have any reports or anything, and I just want to bring the board up to speed on some things here. The FinCom can do what it wants; it can stay or go, but as you see fit, David. But I just didn't want the Board of Selectmen to run off and have Darcy make a motion to adjourn before I could get through a couple things.
We are anxious to hear.
Yes.
All right, well, we'll try this again. I'm going to share another screenshot. This is more for the Board of Selectmen in that it's related to the Community Choice Aggregation Program, electricity-wise. You'll recall that the Board of Selectmen undertook, and the town undertook to do this a couple years ago. You actually started the process before I was even hired. We signed the documents very shortly after I became your town manager, and the program went into effect in December of 18. That program, that pricing was due to expire this coming December. It was only originally for 2 years. And given the favorability in the electricity market right now, the Good Energy, who was our kind of broker in that deal, had come to me about, me and Vicky Massoni about a month ago, suggesting that we should go back out to bid now and lock in the prices for the continuation of that. So there is a bid pricing, this 4-page presentation, which I shared with just a little while ago with the Board of Selectmen via email, kind of goes through a couple things, the high points of the program. One of the things I want to draw your attention to is here on page 2. The program savings from December 18 through March of 2020 has been approximately $264,589 for ratepayers in the town of Hamilton. So those folks in Hamilton who stayed with Good Energy and did not opt out of the Good Energy pricing have recognized savings of just under $265,000 in about a year and a half. And that's just money they saved in their electrical bills. Recognizing, as I said, that the market's good right now, but we're in a recession that's probably going to be less good very soon. I agreed to have Good Energy arrange a bid pricing. We'll be getting the pricing tomorrow. They're projecting a slight increase from where we are, but the best pricing suggests we may be able to propose a 3-year buy. Because this has already been adopted by the Board of Selectmen, previous Board of Selectmen, and by town meeting, there is a requirement to do those votes over again. If we feel that the pricing is favorable and favorable for the community, I'll continue I'll probably endorse that and continue the program tomorrow. So,
Joe, do you have any figures on what it saved the town, the municipal?
It doesn't affect the town, the municipal entity. This was a community choice aggregation is an opt-in plan for municipalities. So basically, we can choose to put all of our residents' bills into the system.
Yep.
Those residents can then choose to opt out if they like. If they don't want to participate, they don't have to. The program does have a minimum of 5% of the energy that's supplied by the program is from renewable sources in Massachusetts. The previous program did allow for people to choose to opt in to have 100% of their electricity supplied by renewable sources. Not a lot of people took advantage of that because it was more expensive than the base program, but there was some people who bought into that. Good Energy has gone back out to bidding, and this round that will open the bids tomorrow, it will offer 5%, which is required by the state, 50%. Which would be higher than the 5%, but less than, and then also still maintain the 100%. So there'll be.
Joe, what about town-owned properties though? The towned properties weren't able to take care of this.
Town buys its electricity separately. We're not part of the buying. So, but we bid our electricity pricing competitively as well. And actually, Vicki and I did that a month and a half ago. So we just took care of that a month ago. We got good pricing. The market was very good right now, and I believe I'll confirm it and get back to you. I believe we wound up going with a rate that we locked in for 3 years on the town. I, in my past life in Winthrop and elsewhere, had always tried to stick to around 2 years, sometimes go to 30 months. But the pricing difference was so good at 36 months that I kind of got talked into it, knowing that we were heading into a recession, knowing that during a recession, at least the first half of it, electricity and commodities tend to go up. At the beginning, I figured, well, let's lock it in right now. And by the time it's coming down again, we should be going out to bid again. So hopefully that'll work in our.
And Joe, last time when Scott and I were working on this, we went in with Gloucester. Is that a similar situation with this bid cycle? And then I guess the other question I have is, and I forget, it's been a while, but Scott or I or the town manager had to be there to sign the bid documents and stuff. Can we authorize you to do that if we haven't yet?
Yeah, I confirmed this with Good Energy because they've done this a number of times. I'm authorized to do it now because of the way it was adopted previously, and I'll be on the call tomorrow. It'll all be done electronically, virtual Zoom meetings and everything else. But I will be there tomorrow to do it. So
okay, good.
That was my good question because they wanted to do the pricing real quick. And I'm like, I can't get Board of Selectmen members there. I can't have a vote tonight for tomorrow meeting. They said, no, that wouldn't be necessary at this point. We're just getting pricing again. Okay. So seeing how everything goes tomorrow, we'll arrange to have Good Energy join us in a future Zoom meeting and let you know how things went and how they're going to roll out the change and everything else. But this pricing wouldn't take effect until this coming December anyway. So.
And can we also do a little snippet somewhere on social media or somewhere on the town website to just show the savings that we've provided to our citizens? Would be great.
Absolutely, we can do that. And one other thing that I wanted to bring to your attention and just ask your kind of guidance on, I don't think it needs a vote per se, but it would be helpful to hear from you. It's likely that the governor is going to open up, he kind of laid the groundwork for today, going to start opening up some aspects of the business world for next week. That'll probably include town halls and some level of government. Most of our colleagues around us on the North Shore are making plans now. I intend to work with our department heads tomorrow and roll out a plan for reopening in some kind of planned way. I already have the Public Works Department making adjustments to the town hall building, for instance, with plexiglass shields and things on the departments that have a lot of visitorship, and we'll be requiring people to wear face masks and the like. But it doesn't address things like the Memorial Day parade and the community block party at the end of June. I think that the community house is already withdrawn from wanting to participate in the block party. I think that that's the right decision on their part. To try to encourage 2,000 people to descend upon Patton Park in late June doesn't make a lot of sense. We're going to intentionally social distance 150 people, I hope, at a town meeting, but to encourage people to just go willy-nilly to the park without any of those measures in place, we wouldn't be able to enforce social distancing in that kind of environment. So they're pulled out. We're basically saying that the community block party's off. Assuming there's no complaint from you, I'll direct Sean Timmons to cancel the fireworks company tomorrow. But the community house did ask if the town would be interested in a late June kind of a rolling rally kind of a thing. I brought it up to Chief Stevens, and the idea being that if we could develop a kind of a parade route with just equipment, no marching bands, nothing like that, but just fire vehicles, police vehicles, and people in trucks with music playing, and encourage people on a to be determined date, either around the community block party date or later in the summer when people are feeling more comfortable again. We could ask people to, with their masks on, put their chair out on the sidewalk and keep 6 feet away from their neighbor. We could potentially do something that would help people start to get back to the sense of being able to not necessarily congregate, but to celebrate and enjoy some of the summer with themselves. I think there's a lot of planning that would have to go into that. But in the short term, I would like some direction from the board, and maybe even a vote tonight is, do we want to advise the Allegiant to cancel the Memorial Day festivities? I just don't see any way that we can safely do that in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I would say that's probably good form to sadly cancel the festivities and the parade. I mean, I don't see how we can do it with the situation we're in right now.
I mean, Boston canceled every event between now and Labor Day, right? So
yeah, I think Boston's not necessarily the norm. A lot of other towns are taking things slowly. I've had folks tell me in other towns that they're going to postpone their Memorial Day parade and do a Labor Day parade. But I've also had people say, well, we're not going to do that, but we're going to do something for the community in July or early August. There seems to be a sense among folks in the municipal world that there is a need to help people feel good again. If we can,
I think the rolling ride is a good idea. I mean, the DJ got on that, the coal landscape truck a couple weekends ago, and I think that was, everybody talked about it real positively. So I think that's a good idea, Joe. I think I would be in favor of some sort of socially distant rolling ride. I think you had this one guy in a truck and playing some music did a lot for the community. So something more organized could be even better.
And we could also make it sort of a celebration for all the graduates, That might be a really
good
fun
way to
thing.
help celebrate. Yeah, that's a great idea.
I like that idea.
And the 8th graders and the 5th graders.
Exactly.
So that would be really fun. I have a pickup truck. I have this vision of having signs, and somebody could have signs for the high schoolers, somebody for the middle schoolers, and then somebody for
I think that's great, because one of the big things that my kids went to Cutler, and they have a big, like a clap out day at the end of 5th grade, and they're not going to be able to do that this year. So that'd be a great idea.
So we'll do it in the summertime, and that's a committee I would like to be on. So count me in for that.
Great idea.
I think that it would be great to put together a committee, and I know the meeting house wanted me to have the community house wanted me to have a conversation with you to find out if you'd be supportive of that and then pursuing that. So I will let them know that you are. I will contact the Legion this week and advise that they halt all plans for Memorial Day parade, because we just don't see how we can do it safely right now for people.
Right.
And
let's cancel the fireworks too, probably, right? So
I think it's already done.
Well, unless you told me no, I was going to do it. I was going to take the bull by the horns and say, unless they say no, we're really married to this idea of doing the fireworks, I was going to say, let's just cancel and save ourselves that money.
All right.
I just have a couple things to add, if I may, kind of on Joe's thing there. I spoke to Sean Timmons just to get an update from the rec department, and basically the same things that Joe was saying about the community block party and the fireworks, etc. But right now there's a survey on the Hamilton Wenham Recreation page polling parents about summer programming. So they've had a good amount of responses so far, but if you know people that have kids that are going to do any programming or want to do any programming this summer, have them put their input in that. I think the survey is going to be open for a little while longer. And they're still kind of figuring out what the new norms will be for our camp this summer and the pool. Sean had a meeting with the pool staff this last week, Zoom meeting, of course, just to kind of confirm with them about working out new procedures and maybe scheduling reservations for pool visits and then disinfecting in between groups of people and bringing their own chairs, trying to figure out what the best practice will be for moving forward with opening the pool and having the summer camp program in different venues. As far as, the summer camp program is one of our bigger programs. So trying to figure out how to handle all those kids and keep them separate. And that is a kind of a big question right now. So they're trying to figure all that out. So they're doing their best to provide the programming that they normally do, but understand it will be considerably different, but they're doing their best to accommodate the people that do want to participate.
And Sean,
yeah,
I'm sorry. I was just going to add that just from a health concern, there's another sort of a mutation of some sort of the coronavirus that may perhaps be affecting children. And so I think we should watch that very carefully before
Agreed.
we sort of encourage any summer fraternization with kids. We just don't know enough about it yet.
Right. And I think part of the survey that Sean put up is, if people are thinking about summer programming, what they expect or what they're looking for. And, and Sean said so far the survey results have kind of been almost opposite. Some people are kind of ready to be over it, and some people are very concerned about the health risks. So responses are all over the board. He's just trying to get a sense of what the community is looking for, and it all depends on the health risks and at the moment what we're dealing with.
And just like everything, we just don't have answers yet. So that's my only question mark about that right now.
Right. And then the two other things that I had was the open space and recreation plan is I'm going to say it's complete. They haven't submitted it yet, but it's soon to be submitted. I don't have an electronic copy of it yet, but they've got some print
should
copies.
be on the town website.
Is it on the website now?
I believe it was. I'll double check that tomorrow, but I know we had a conversation between Richard, Michelle, and I about getting a link to it because it's a dense document.
Yeah,
So,
I know that Richard had printed some copies and dropped them off with some people. I didn't happen to get one, but I knew there was an issue with maybe an electronic copy, but hopefully we can get that soon if it's not already up there. But that should be submitted to the state very soon. And then the only other thing I had was we had talked last week about the housing production plan, but we didn't have it on the agenda this week. I just hope that we can have it on in the next meeting or so here to get that approved.
Sean, that was my oversight when I was trying to set the agenda for this meeting and concerned about all the things that we were talking about. Quite frankly, it slipped my mind, and I didn't realize it until after the agenda was posted. And then I reached out to Jeff, and we decided that it would be okay to let it go a week because there was a lot to go through tonight. And unless I'm told no, I'm planning to have it on the agenda for next week.
That's fine. And then just one last thing, as kind of a side thing, I'll follow up with you, Joe, about it too, is the Rain Braille program that I've been doing the last 4 or 5 years now. We've kind of put it on hold. I got a email from the rep, and I've had a few people say that they're interested, but they're trying to figure out the best way to do something with the program, either postpone it, or the rep said a lot of towns have bought like a pallet, which is like 8 barrels, and then just sold them outright to residents. But maybe you and I, Joe, can discuss it online. I've got about 3 people interested, but there really hasn't been any orders because everything's been kind of upside down. So if we can get those residents that were interested some barrels, and that we can figure out either they buy them directly from the company and we figure out a delivery mechanism for them, or they drop off at town hall and come and social distance pick them up, something like that. We can discuss it offline.
All right.
That's it.
Yeah, we could do that.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, Sean.
Joe, I had one thing for you.
Yeah, sure, Bill.
Joe, I apologize if I missed an email or if I put you on the spot, but you were going to have Tim Olson look into our sort of water resource issues, because we got all our residents home 24/7 through the summer. I just want to make sure we want to forecast out if we have any issues we need to deal on water supply. So
I know that
big
Tim.
impact.
I could try to have Tim present at me. We wanted to go over some things about water at an upcoming meeting. I could either try to do it at the next meeting or the meeting after that, based on how dense this agenda becomes for next week. It's starting to fill up. We do have some concerns. The lack of snow this year, and until this month, really, the relative lack of condensation has us concerned about where we're going to be with regard to drought conditions this summer. So, I can get Tim present to give us an update on where we stand and what he thinks.
Great, thank you.
All right, Darcy.
Well, I would like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, Darcy Dale.
Darcy Dale, aye.
William
Bill.
Olson, aye.
Sean
Farrell, aye.
Rosie.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Jeff Hubbard, aye.
All right, thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Does FinCom need to?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm stuttering toward it. I just wanted to ask if we have any volunteers from FinCom to serve on the select group regarding June 20 logistics. Any volunteers?
Can we talk about it on Thursday?
Yeah, well.
All right, we'll defer that.
I eagerly await your recommendation.
We will have
Friday
someone
morning.
on Thursday.
One of us will do it.
Yep.
All right.
Good.
Thank you.
So I would ask for a motion to adjourn from FinCom.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, we have to do it by roll call, Joe?
The motion can be made and seconded, but now you have to do a roll call. So the motion was made by Nick Tenson, seconded by Christina Schenk-Hargrove. Now you need a roll call of all 5 members.
Dave Wanker, yes.
John Prulidge, yes.
Valerie McCormick, yes.
Nick Tenson, yes.
Christina Schenk-Hargrove, yes.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone for joining.